Hey, so I'm going to get started this morning by just welcoming all of you guys. Welcome. Nice to see everyone here. This morning, what we're going to be doing is we're starting with some meditation like we do each class. And then afterwards, I'm going to share with you guys the Eightfold Path, which is the path to enlightenment. You would need to know this inside and out, backwards and forwards, to be able to actually make your way to enlightenment. So I'm going to take my time and gradually walk you guys through this using the original words of the Buddha. We're going to take a mid-morning break, give you guys a chance to rest and talk with each other, have some snacks and all that good stuff. And then I'm going to come back and finish out the Eightfold Path with you guys. And then after our hour and a half lunch break, we're going to come back and I'm going to teach you guys meditation inside and out, backwards and forwards, the real details of meditation. Because by that point, you have learned the Eightfold Path and you'll understand better how meditation fits into all of this. So if you'd like to join for meditation, the way I start is with some chanting to be able to ease into the meditation. You guys are welcome to join in on the chanting. I have chanting sheets right there that you guys can see the chants. Just keep in mind that this isn't a rite, ritual, ceremony, worship, or prayer, or anything like that. This is today used just as a way to ease the mind into meditation and get more benefit out of the meditation itself. After the chanting, I'll then come in with some guidance to be able to help you. Then there's going to be a period of time of quietness where we're just meditating together. Then we're going to come out of that meditation with some more chanting, and that's where I'll start today's class. So feel free to join in on the chanting if you like. Arahang Sama Sambuddho Bhagava Otang Bhagavanang Apivate Sawakato Bhagavata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Bhagavato Sāvaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Sama Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Sama Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Sama Sambuddhassa Iti piso Bhagava Arahang Sama Sambuddho Vichacharanang Sammuno Sakato Rokavitu Anutero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusrang Bhutto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath, not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then, whenever you're ready, Exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing. That's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder. And whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. ระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมะคะวะโอตังมะคะวันนังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมะคะวะตาธัมโมดามังนามาสามิสุปฏิปันโนมะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารนังสัมมุโนสกาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังโพโตภาควาติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Once again, good morning to all of you guys. Nice to see everyone here. As you guys can tell, I'm just getting over a cold here, so a little bit of coughing here or there, but nonetheless, I can still teach and I'm not contagious because I already went through antibiotics and all that good stuff. It's just the residual symptoms of getting over a cold. So thank you guys for being here. Pleased to help you guys to learn the teachings of the Buddha. I'm going to be sharing with you guys the Eightfold Path. This is the path for all humans to enlightenment. If you're interested in experiencing what the Buddha experienced, which is this enlightened mental state where the mind's completely peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy, which is a permanent mental state, you would need to know this teaching inside and out, backwards and forwards. You're going to need to learn it multiple times and really dial it in close to your life. This is the path to enlightenment. This is the way that he actually accomplished getting to enlightenment. Remember, there's no belief in the teachings of the Buddha. It's not about rites, rituals, ceremonies, worship, or prayer, or any of those kinds of things. He never taught any of those things. If you're seeing those things associated with the teachings of the Buddha, those are misunderstandings that people are having. What he taught you to do is cultivate the mind and train the mind, and this Eightfold Path is the way to actually accomplish that. So I'm going to teach it to you using his original words so you can see what did he teach and what he didn't teach. This image here helps you to be able to see what I'm going to be walking you through. I'm going to be starting with right view. Then I'm going to teach you right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. It's going to take us time to gradually walk through this. And it's important that you don't believe it as I'm teaching it to you. I'm going to show you how to learn it, investigate, examining his teachings. I'm going to show you how to reflect on it to verify if it's true or false. And then I'm going to show you how to practice it, integrating it into your day-to-day life, because that's actually where you'll experience the real results. This path is organized into these three sections of wisdom, moral conduct, and mental discipline. The wisdom section helps to build a foundation for you that you then build the moral conduct and the mental discipline on top of. One of the ways to think about this Eightfold Path is, yes, it's a core central teaching that the Buddha taught that everything else plugs into. But one of the ways to think about it is like 8 individual dials. If you had a speaker system and you were interested in getting a better quality sound out of those speakers, you would kind of tweak these 8 individual dials in order to be able to get a better and better quality sound out of those speakers. Well, your mind is essentially the same way. As you tweak this and bring this into your life closer and closer, you're going to see that your mind's performing better and better. Not only is the mind peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy, but you'll see that focus, concentration, clarity, and deep memory. You'll get to the point where you no longer experience any discontent feelings. All the anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy, all of that can be eliminated from the mind through training of the mind. You'll notice that your personal and professional relationships are really blossoming. And it's this path that's going to guide you in how to do that. This path starts out with right view, and I'll share with you guys the words of the Buddha here on what is right view. And then I'm going to teach it to you, helping you to understand it. So he says, in what, monks, is right view? It is, monks, the wisdom of discontentedness, the wisdom of the cause of discontentedness, the wisdom of the elimination of discontentedness, and the wisdom of the way of practice leading to the elimination of discontentedness. This is called right view. So what he's doing here is he's actually pointing to another teaching. There's a teaching that he has called the Four Noble Truths. And I put the top section of that here underneath of this line. There's more to the Four Noble Truths than just what you're seeing here, but this is the top section to help you see the connection and correlation between the Eightfold Path and the Four Noble Truths. Because as I mentioned, the Eightfold Path is a core central teaching that everything else plugs into. So once you have this confidence and you can see the correlation between what he's describing as right view in the Eightfold Path and the Four Noble Truths, now I'm going to teach you the Four Noble Truths and help you to understand this, because this lays down a foundation for you to understanding and establishing what's called right view. In 4 simple statements, you're going to be able to understand the problem that the Buddha discovered in the mind, the cause of that problem, the elimination of it, and the path forward. You can actually have a real breakthrough to understanding why you experience feelings like anger, sadness, frustration, and others. Because oftentimes people think that it's the outside world that's causing you to be angry or frustrated. But what you're going to be able to see through the Four Noble Truths is that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. And this is why you can actually eliminate them. That's why the Buddha starts his path with the Four Noble Truths. Because how could you ever eliminate things like anger, sadness, stress, anxiety, guilt, and fear, and shame, and all these other feelings if you didn't understand what's causing it? So in this very first teaching from the Buddha, you're going to understand what's causing these feelings. And I'm going to walk you guys through this in a way that you can independently verify. And just like always, if you guys have questions, I'm going to be stopping at different times throughout our talk where you guys can ask any and all questions you like to get clarification. Remember, here at the course, if you guys would like to ask a question, we have microphones here that'll help the people online to be able to hear what you're saying. And then for those of you guys online, you can put your questions into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. So in order to understand the Four Noble Truths and have this breakthrough to understanding what's causing these feelings, and once and for all understanding this, you're going to need to first understand what's called the 3 universal truths. These are building blocks to help you understand the Four Noble Truths. So I'm going to teach you guys these first, and then I'll teach you the Four Noble Truths. We call them the 3 universal truths and the Four Noble Truths because the Buddha knew that they were true. I know that they're true, and other people know that they're true. But in order for you to gain the benefit of this, you need to know that they're true. And that's why you're not interested in believing any of these teachings, because with belief, you don't know what's true or false. You're just believing what somebody convinced you to believe, or you convince yourself to believe it. And the Buddha is describing to you in these 3 universal truths, he's explaining to you the way the world is. The Buddha didn't teach a bunch of rules and commandments, and then if everybody follows these rules and commandments, the world will become a better place. He didn't teach you the way the world should be. He's teaching you the way the world is. In this first universal truth, he's explaining to you that the world is impermanent. And this is going to help you as a building block with the Four Noble Truths. That he explains how the world is constantly changing, that things arise, they change, and they fade away. These are called conditioned objects. A conditioned object is impermanent. It will arise, it will change, and then it will fade away. Anything that you can see, hear, smell, taste, anything that comes in contact with the body, or any thoughts or ideas that go through the mind, these are all conditioned objects. The material world around us is a conditioned object. And now it will arise, it will change, and it will fade away. Then there's something called unconditioned objects. Unconditioned objects do not arise, they do not change, and they do not fade away. Unconditioned object is something like enlightenment. That's why it's a permanent mental state, because your mind is actually unconditioned at that point. In that mental state, those qualities that you experience, they don't arise, they don't change, and they don't fade away. The mind is permanently experiencing the peace, calm, serenity, and contentedness with joy, as well as all the other qualities of enlightenment. Also, the natural laws that the Buddha taught during his lifetime, those do not arise, change, or fade away. They are unconditioned. That's why his teachings are timeless. That what he taught 2,500 years ago is just as applicable today as it was back then, because these natural laws don't change, and he described these natural laws for us. So the Buddha didn't say that everything is impermanent. But what I say here is I say that everything in the world is impermanent, meaning anything in the material world, this is all impermanent. Anything that you can see, hear, smell, taste, touch, or comes in contact with the mind, any thoughts or ideas that go through the mind. Okay, so this is a little bit of the intellectual learning on the universal truth of impermanence. But you don't believe that. You're not interested in believing it. That's just the first part. You've got to move this into reflection to independently verify, is this true or false? And now what I suggest you do is you look around the world through your own direct experience to be able to determine if what I just said is true or false. Because if this is a universal truth, you should be able to independently verify it. Because I said that everything that you can see, hear, smell, taste, anything that comes in contact with the body, or any thoughts or ideas that go through the mind are all impermanent. They're constantly changing. So I suggest you start with something that you're familiar with, like this human body. Ask yourself, is this body permanent, meaning it's exactly the same and it never changes? Or is this body impermanent, meaning it's constantly changing? What would you say? It's changing, right? It's impermanent. That ever since the egg and the sperm came together, this body's been constantly changing. We get taller, we get shorter, we get bigger, we get smaller. I'm not looking at you, Steve. Well, I am looking at you, but not inferring anything, right? Because I'm pretty big here myself, right? So we get bigger, we get smaller, right? We get pimples and wrinkles and moles, and we get gray hair. We start losing our hair, right? All these things are changed, right? Ever since the egg and the sperm came together, we grow teeth, right? Teeth come in and then they fall out and then they grow in again. And then we get cavities. All this is constant change with the physical body. So you should be able to see that, yes, this body is impermanent. What about your relationships? If your relationships are permanent, that means you've had exactly the same people in your life throughout your entire life. If your relationships are impermanent, that means you've been having people coming and going in and out of your life. So what would you say? Are your relationships permanent or impermanent? They're impermanent, right? People are constantly coming and going in and out of your life. What about your bank account? It's permanent? Really? Is your bank account permanent or impermanent? It's impermanent, right? It's going up and down and up and down. Sometimes it goes up, 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 or down, down, down. This is constant change, right? What about the weather? Is the weather permanent or impermanent? It's impermanent, right? It's sunny, it's raining. Some places it's sleeting and snowing and hail and tornadoes and hurricanes and all kinds of things, right? That's constant change. We could go on and on and on like this. And if that's what you need to do, you should do that because you need to deeply soak it into your mind and build this wisdom that the world around you is impermanent. When you're walking down the street on the sidewalk and you see a crack in the sidewalk, that's impermanence. If you look at a tree and you see green leaves in the tree and brown leaves on the ground, this is impermanence. You can see there was a certain people here in the class yesterday, and now there's a different people in the class today, different number of people, different types of people, right, that are here today. This is just change, right? That's what you're going to experience in life is constant change. And this is a building block that's going to help you to understand the Four Noble Truths by the time we get there. But you need to independently verify this and see it for yourself. Then the second universal truth is the universal truth of discontentedness. If you've studied the teachings of the Buddha in other places, you might have heard the word suffering being used here. I'm going to share with you what I share as part of this teaching, and I'm going to circle back and help you to understand why I don't use the word suffering, because this actually helps you to understand what the Buddha was teaching during his life. That during his life, he explained the second universal truth to help you understand what the unenlightened mind is experiencing. And in the original teachings in the Pali Canon, the word dukkha is being used. And oftentimes people translate that as suffering, but it doesn't actually represent fully what the Buddha was teaching. He was explaining that your mind is discontented, or experiencing discontentedness, because he describes this universal truth as the unenlightened mind having three types of feelings: pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and feelings that are neither painful nor pleasant. And these are conditioned feelings that, based on some condition, you will then experience a pleasant feeling like happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, or euphoria. But then, based on some condition, you're going to experience painful feelings like sadness, anger, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, and things like this. Very painful to experience. Then you've got neither painful nor pleasant feelings, which again are conditioned feelings. I put boredom and loneliness here, but some people say that's very painful for them. So you could put that in the painful category if you like. But shyness is a good example of that. Or say you're on public transportation and somebody comes and sits really close to you and your body is touching their body. You might say, it's not painful, it's not pleasant. You're kind of dissatisfied or uncomfortable in that situation. That's the neither painful nor pleasant feelings. And these are called conditioned feelings, that based on some condition, you're going to experience this feeling. So if you wake up in the morning and you get really excited when you see it's sunny outside, that's conditional happiness. Based on the condition that the sun is present, your mind then experiences happiness. But now the problem with that is you get so excited, you're going to go outside, you're going to go hiking, you're going to see your friends, you go take a shower and you come out and it's raining. And now you're frustrated or angry or irritated. This is what the unenlightened mind does. It goes up and down and up and down. It's shaken up. It can't maintain its peacefulness and its joy, its happiness permanently. Because an enlightened being, when they wake up in the morning, they were already happy before they ever woke up. And then they see it's sunny outside. It's like, sweet, I'm going to go hiking today. I'm going to call my friends. It's going to be a great time. And then you go take a shower and you come out and it's raining. And it's like, oh, okay, it's raining. So guess I'm not going hiking. Well, maybe I'll stay home and read a book, or I'll go to the mall, or maybe I'll invite my friends over and we can have dinner or something like this, right? You can maintain your happiness. But if your mind is basing its happiness on the sun is not permanent. So that means your happiness is not permanent. So that's why you haven't been able to get to permanent happiness, because your mind is experiencing conditioned feelings. That if your bank account balance is up here, you're happy. But then when it goes here, you're sad or frustrated. If the weather is sunny, you'll be happy. If it's not sunny, then you'll be angry or frustrated or irritated. That's called conditional feelings. So this is the problem that the Buddha discovered in the mind. And you can independently verify that what he's describing here is the unenlightened mind, because you know right now that your mind is unenlightened, and you can verify that you experience all three of these feelings: pleasant, painful, neither painful nor pleasant. If you think there's a certain feeling that you experience that doesn't fit into one of these three categories, we can talk about it when we get to the question period and we can discuss it. So you could independently verify that, yes, this is what I experience as an unenlightened being, and the Buddha is explaining that. And that's how you independently verify that this is the truth, that he's explaining the unenlightened mind. So I describe this as discontent, discontented, and discontentedness. Because the reason why is that you need to be able to see these pleasant feelings as just as much a part of the problem as the painful ones. By the time you get to enlightenment, you'll be experiencing unconditioned mental qualities. The happiness will be unconditioned. There'll be happiness and joy that's in the mind always. The mind will be bright and cheerful and glad and uplifted at all times. But you can't experience that in the unenlightened state as long as you have conditional happiness. If you allow your mind to have conditional happiness, then the painful feelings are waiting for you right around the corner. So if you get a new job offer, for example, and it's like the perfect company, the perfect title, the perfect salary, the perfect coworkers, you're so excited to go to this job. Well, you'll be happy as long as you have that job. But then when you get fired or laid off or the company goes out of business, you'll be sad or angry or frustrated. Or say you get so excited and happy, your mom calls you and says, hey, I'm going to come visit you. I heard you got a new house and I'd like to come make that favorite food for you that you've always liked since you were a child. We're going to have a great time this weekend. And you get so excited. Mom's coming on Saturday morning. I can't wait to see her. Yay. But then on Friday night, she calls you and says, oh, so sorry, I can't come. My car's not working. And now you're frustrated and angry. So if you allow your mind to get the conditioned pleasant feelings, the painful ones are waiting for you. So that's why I use the word discontent, discontented, or discontentedness, because it brings your mind to the full understanding of the emotions and feelings that the Buddha is describing, where the mind is shaken up, where the word suffering explains the painful feelings quite well. When you're angry or sad or frustrated, you probably say you were suffering. But if your boss walked into your office and said, hey, I'm going to give you a $100,000 a year raise, you're doing such a good job, and you got really excited about that, you probably wouldn't say you were suffering, right? Or if that person you don't know came and sat really close to you on public transportation and your body was touching their body, you probably wouldn't say you were suffering in that situation. So the word suffering doesn't explain the pleasant feelings and the neither painful nor pleasant feelings. You would only be understanding 33% of his teachings if you use the word suffering. That means you're missing 66% of his teachings. And if you're missing 66% of a teacher's teachings, how could you ever get to the goal of enlightenment? So that's why I don't use the word suffering. I use discontent, discontented, or discontentedness because it's explaining how the mind's shaken up. It's unsteady, it's uncalm. Because when you're really excited like that, you can't make wise decisions. You're so excited, you're operating on the excitement, right? So your mind being shaken up like this is going to produce unwise decisions and unskillful moral conduct. So I use this word discontentedness. Then there's the universal truth of non-self. This is actually the solution to one of the problems that the Buddha discovered in the mind. So let me explain to you this problem more closely, and then I'll explain to you this universal truth, which is the solution to that problem. Yesterday, I was describing the 10 fetters, these 10 individual pollutions that are in the mind that the Buddha discovered. Remember, he refers to them as a fetter because it's like a shackle and a chain and a ball that's around your ankle. And you need to be able to eliminate these pollutions in order to experience the enlightened mental state. Well, the very first fetter or pollution of the mind is called personal existence view. This is where the mind clings to your body or the mind, thinking that this is who you are as a person. The mind will cling to a certain self-image or a certain self-identity, wanting to be perceived by others in a certain way. And you can only be comfortable when you're being perceived the way you want to be perceived. So for example, if you ever went out in a social situation and you spilled something on your clothing and you were embarrassed by that, that's your personal existence view. Clinging to this body, wanting others to perceive you a certain way, and you can only feel comfortable if they're perceiving you the way you want to be perceived. Or say you maybe looked in the mirror and you saw a pimple or a wrinkle or a mole or a gray hair, or you started losing your hair and you were shaken up by that, that's your personal existence view. Clinging to this body, this self-image, wanting to be perceived by others in a certain way. And you can only feel comfortable if you're being perceived that way. Or maybe you stood in front of your closet and you thought about, who am I going to see today? And how do I want to look? You maybe put on a certain clothes and you're like, no, that's not it. You put on another set of clothes and you're like, no, that's not it. And you put on a third set and you're like, all right, now I feel good to go outside. Or maybe you were like me when I was a child growing up. Before I would go to school, I would get out the gel and the mousse and I would run it through my hair and try to get every little hair in exactly the right spot. And I didn't feel comfortable to go to school until every little hair was in the right spot. And sometimes I would do this for so long, I would miss the school bus, right? So you might have experienced these kinds of things. This is the mind clinging to your body, wanting to be perceived by others in a certain way, craving for this to be permanent and appear to others in a certain way. You can only be happy if you're appearing that way. That's the self-image part of it. But then there's a self-identity based on your culture, your ethnicity, your sexual orientation, your nationality, your job or occupation, any number of things you can cling to as who you think you are. And now the mind can only be comfortable when those things are present. So for example, maybe you were in a relationship with a boyfriend or girlfriend. And when you guys were together, maybe you felt really great, maybe a husband or a wife. because your mind identified with, I am a boyfriend, I am a girlfriend, I am a husband, I'm a wife. And now there was a certain level of comfort there. But then when you guys broke up and you were single, you didn't identify with I am single. And your mind might have felt like you wanted to hurry up and get right back into another relationship again, because the mind felt like that was the way to solve this uncomfortableness, is to be back in another relationship. Or say that maybe you were at a restaurant and maybe two tables over, somebody was talking about your nationality in a fond way. They might say, all Americans are lovely and kind and warm and gentle, or all Indians, or all Chinese people, or all Lithuanians and Mexicans. Oh, they're so friendly and warm. Oh, I like those types of people so much. If you hear that and you identify with that as who you are, you'll be really happy and excited about that because you think they're talking about you. But then because of impermanence, it's only a matter of time before you hear people talk in negative and degrading ways about your nationality, whether it's on the news or at a restaurant or something like this. And now when they're being degrading and disparaging and you're holding in your mind that that's who you are as a person, now you're going to feel frustrated or angry or irritated. You can hold on to any number of things of who you think you are based on your culture, your ethnicity, your sexual orientation, your nationality, your job or occupation. So, for example, if I thought I am a police officer and I cling to this as who I think I am, well, as long as I'm doing that job, I feel great. But that job's not permanent. 10 years, 15 years into this, and maybe I get injured, maybe I get fired, maybe I get laid off, and now I'm driving a taxi. And the mind's thinking I am a police officer. But now there's this disgruntledness and this frustration in the mind because the mind feels like I am a police officer. Or maybe you're retired and you're kind of feeling like less of a person. You don't feel as whole anymore. This is because the mind's identifying with that job or occupation is who you think you are. Any number of things your mind can cling to. I had a student one time call me shortly after COVID and they said, David, I need to talk to you. And I said, oh, okay, sure. What do you got? Because I help students in private personal guidance too. After they learn in classes, if they'd like to come talk with me, there's plenty of opportunity for you guys to be able to do that. They said, well, ever since COVID, I've been having a lot of trouble going into restaurants and going into different places that I used to go into before. Now they have contactless payment. And in the past, I would just give them my cash. I'd order my coffee, 30 seconds order. I'd give them my cash. They give me my change. I get my coffee and I leave. But now, since COVID, they turn around the computer screen and I need to do this contactless payment. And I need to put in whether I'm going to tip them 15%, 20%, 25%. And he's like, in these places where I just order for 30 seconds, I don't give them a tip. And I feel very conflicted here. And I don't understand why. I feel very uncomfortable. And he said, David, I just want you to know I'm a good tipper. I'm a really great tipper. But for some reason, I don't feel comfortable when I'm in these places and I'm not tipping. And I said, oh, this is because of your personal existence view. You're clinging to this idea that I am a great tipper. And when you're tipping, you feel comfortable, you feel great. And when you're not tipping, you don't feel comfortable because your identity feels like it's not intact, right? So you can cling to any number of things of who you think you are. Sometimes people get this so strong that they come to places like where I live in Thailand in order to find themselves. They might go to their parents or their family and they say, you know what? I don't even know who I am anymore. I need to go find myself. I need to go find my true self. And they go to places like Thailand or India or Mexico or different places like this to find themselves. And now they come to that place for 6 months, a year, or whatever it is. And then eventually they go back home. They're like, yay, Eureka, I found myself, mom and dad. I know who I am again. They haven't actually found themselves. They might have found new hobbies, new activities, new friends, new job, but they haven't found themselves. Because what the Buddha teaches with this universal truth of non-self is that there is no self, that this body is not you, this mind is not you. But the thing is that the mind will cling to this, thinking that this is who you are. And now you can only feel comfortable if those things are intact. So you need to get to the point where you realize non-self, that you realize that this body is not you and this mind is not you. There is a body, there is a mind, and it's come together for this existence, but this doesn't define who you are as a person. Because as soon as you start grabbing onto any of this stuff as who you think you are, once it changes, you will feel uncomfortable, right? When your kids go off to college, you might feel like, I am not a mom anymore. And I feel like so conflicted, where you need to be able to understand I can perform this role while not identifying with that as who I am. I can understand that this body was born on a land that's referred to as America, but I don't have to adopt the identity of I am American. I can perform the role of sharing the teachings of the Buddha without adopting the identity of I am a Buddhist teacher. Because some people are going to say fond things about Buddhist teachers, and some things are people are going to say things that are unkind about Buddhist teachers because of the universal truth of impermanence. Not everybody thinks fondly of Buddhist teachers. So sometimes people even do this with their choices and decisions. Like maybe in the past, someone might have used drugs and alcohol. And now in the present moment, they've been taught, I am an alcoholic or I am an addict. And now they maybe feel guilty or shameful about that, right? Well, that's not actually true. True reality is that in the past, you made choices and decisions to use drugs and alcohol, but that doesn't define who you are today. The decisions that you made in the past doesn't define who you are today as a person. But the mind's going to try to grab onto this as who you think you are. So the Buddha teaches you that there is no self. And then there's certain teachings that you need in order to be able to strip this away and be able to see this truth and actually get to the point where you've liberated your mind from this fetter of personal existence view. So in this book series that I share, the very first book, chapter 16, I teach you all the proactive techniques of how you can eliminate personal existence view by implementing this universal truth of non-self. But in a course like this, I just introduce it to you so you can understand it. And then in the future, you can learn the teachings of how to strip it away. Because if you don't understand the Eightfold Path, those things that are in chapter 16 aren't really so effective. So you really need to be able to learn the Eightfold Path first. So this is a little bit of the intellectual understanding of the universal truth of of a non-self. But now you don't believe that. You need to move this into reflection to see the truth for yourself. Now, sometimes when people hear me talk about the universal truth of non-self intellectually, they understand it right away. Other times it takes people sometimes upwards of a year to understand it because we've spent so much time of our life accumulating this idea of who we are as a person. And the idea of saying, no, none of that stuff is you, it's very hard for the mind to be able to see that. So if you're in the situation where you're not quite maybe understanding personal existence view, that's okay. I understand. Because ever since our birth, we were given labels. I don't know all of your labels, but my label was David, right? And you all have labels. And now we have certain personality and character that we assign to that. And then even in our countries that we live in, we have flags, we have national anthems, we have sports teams. You know, people have other plans for us that they want us to adopt this personal existence view. Because if we think I am American, then that means that we'll invest in building this country and we'll invest in real estate and we'll invest our time and effort in building up this country because we're taking pride in this country, right? And there's no harm with building up a country, but it's just that when your mind adopts that identity, that's where you're going to experience discontentedness. So the Buddha is teaching you how to strip this away. But even if you're not understanding this 100% right now, you can actually independently verify that there is no self. So I'll give you guys 3 ways to do that. The first one is to think about yourself when you were a child, teenager, early adulthood, and then now. Think about your character, your personality. Think about how you viewed yourself. Was it exactly the same through all those 4 stages of life, or has it been constantly changing? It's constantly changing, right? So that's the first way. You can see there is no permanent self. Here's the second way. If your arm was amputated and you only have one hand and one arm, are you less of a person? You're not less of a person, right? So there you can see intellectually that you know that this body is not you, because otherwise you would answer that question differently. You would say, yes, there's less body, so there's less me, so therefore I'm less of a person. But you didn't answer it that way. This is what personal existence view does for you, is it has confusion in the mind. That right now, intellectually, you understand this body is not you. But in the heat of the moment, if someone's like, wow, that shirt really brings out the colors of your eyes. You're so beautiful. You're so handsome. You're like, oh, they're talking about me. You feel so great. But it's only a matter of time before somebody says, where did you get that haircut? Are you going outside looking like that? And now you're frustrated or angry, right? Or irritated, right? So, right now, intellectually, you can understand that this body is not you. But in the heat of the moment, that confusion, that delusion, that misunderstanding kicks in where the personal existence view is there. And now you experience discontent feelings. Here's the third way that you can verify this. Point to yourself. Where are you? Maybe everyone's realized on self. Okay, yeah, gentleman's pointing there, right? This is where a lot of people will point. They'll point here or here, right? So if you're pointing here and you say, I am here, you need to look at what you're pointing to. What you're pointing to is a shirt, in my case, your case, a jacket, right? So you've got clothing. You're pointing to clothing. And you need to ask yourself, is that who you are? This clothing that you're wearing? If we took off the clothing and held it up and pointed to it, is that who you are? That shirt that you're wearing? That's not you, right? So we throw that away. Where are you? Because we're on this search. We're looking for the you, right? We're looking for this self. And someone might point again. And now you need to see, what are you pointing to? You're pointing to skin. And ask yourself, is that who you are? That skin that you've got. If we were able to rip off that skin and hold it up and point to it, is that you, that skin that you've got? That's not you either, right? So we throw that away. Where are you? And someone might point again. We've got bones, we've got muscle tissue, we've got organs and fluid. None of those bits and pieces and parts are you. But the mind is going to cling to this, thinking that this is who you are. And now you'll experience discontent feelings, whether someone's saying something agreeable or disagreeable to you. So you need to peer through this and see that there is a body, there is a mind, and they've come together for this existence. And we call this a person, but this doesn't define who you are. And now you can experience peace and joy. Because if somebody says something degrading and disparaging about Americans, it doesn't affect my mind because I am not American in terms of what the mind has identified with. The mind doesn't have that identity, right? If someone says something wonderful about Americans or degrading about Americans, okay, they're not talking about me because there's no me here, right? If they say something about the physical body or any other thing, they're not talking about me. That's just what they're choosing to say. And I don't see that as either being agreeable or disagreeable. It's just their opinion, it's just their view. And I don't have to adopt that identity of who I am as a person. So I understand that this body was born on a land that is referred to as America, but I don't have to adopt that identity. This land was not always called America. It used to be called something else, and it won't always be called America. At some point, people might change to some other name, right? So you need to be able to strip away this idea, this illusion of who you think you are as a person, while still taking care of the body and maintaining it, because it's wise to maintain this, but without clinging to it, wanting it to be permanent and identifying who you are as a person through this body. So I'm going to pause here and see what questions you guys have about these three universal truths. Remember, they're building blocks for the Four Noble Truths. Could you get a microphone, Shweta? There's a button on there. Oh, I need to.
Is it?
Mhm.
Yeah. So my question is that so first of all, when you say there is no permanent self,
Mhm.
is there an impermanent self?
There
And
is,
okay,
in the unenlightened mind, it has the idea that there is a self and it's clinging to that false reality, but you need to be able to peer through that and see that there actually isn't a self. And that's part of the wisdom that the mind needs to cultivate. And then once you see, like, oh my goodness, yeah, I've been clinging to this idea that I'm an Indian or that I'm a wife or that I'm a mother or I'm a teacher, I'm a this, I'm a that, I'm a kind person. Sometimes people can cling to that. Now, when someone's like, you're the rudest person I've ever met, and now you're frustrated and angry because the mind's clinging to this idea that I am a kind person, right? So you need to be able to see that holding on to any of this stuff is just leading to discontentedness, and then implement the proactive techniques that the Buddha taught to be able to strip all this away. And then you can get to the point where you understand that it's wise to be kind, but you don't have to adopt that identity as who you are. That it's wonderful that you're a school teacher, but you don't need to adopt that as an identity of who you think you are. You provide the role of being a mother and a wife, but you don't need to adopt that as who you are, because someday Vibhav's going to die. Your children are going to go off into the world. They're not going to need you as much as they need you right now. And if you identify with that as who you are, then you're going to be disgruntled or frustrated or uncomfortable when you're not fulfilling those types of things. So it's a matter of understanding that there's these things that exist without adopting it as who you are as a person. So there is no self, but the mind thinks that there is, and that's what you need to strip away.
So, like, if I'm not, I mean, I know that. So, if I think of myself as, so I'm not a wife, I'm not a teacher, I'm not a mom,
Mm,
then when I'm moving towards, when I'm trying to go towards enlightenment,
mhm.
like what is the vocabulary that I should use? Like, what am I trying to enlighten? Like, is it like a consciousness? Is it like what is going towards enlightenment? Like,
Yeah. So it's not I am enlightened. That's not what your mind would think at that point. You understand that the mind is experiencing enlightenment because there's no I here. This is one of the ways to know that somebody's not enlightened. If they tell you I am enlightened, well, you know they're bragging and they're boastful, but also there is no I. So as soon as someone says I am enlightened, you know that that's not true. So by you stripping away this idea of a self, what you're working on is you're working on the mind to get the mind to the point where it is experiencing enlightenment.
the mind.
You are not the mind.
Okay, it's hard for me, but I'll think about it.
Yeah, what the mind's going to do when you first start learning about the universal truth of non self is oftentimes the mind thinks, if I'm not the body and I'm not the mind, then what am I? This is the mind still grasping. It's trying to hold on to something and just tell me, what am I, so I can grab onto it. So as soon as you grab onto something, you think that this is who you are and you're identifying with that. Now you're going to experience discontentedness based on that, and your mind's going to be shaken up. So you need to get to the point where you don't try to cling to any of these things as who you think you are, although you're fulfilling those roles. You can still fulfill the role of being a mother without allowing your mind to adopt that mindset. Because if somebody says something fond, like all mothers are wonderful and blah, 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 you'll feel great. But then it's only a matter of time before someone says something degrading and disparaging about mothers. And now, if you identify that way, you're going to feel frustrated and angry about that. Whereas if you just strip that out of your mind and be like, no, 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 like I'm doing this and I'm choosing to do this and I enjoy being in the role of a mother, but my mind doesn't have to adopt that identity of who I am as a person. And now this is where you'll experience more peace and more joy, having eliminated that personal existence view. Mhm.
I have hello. I have a question, but it might not be right to ask it right now. I'm not
Mhm.
sure. I have a question about guarding doorways and aversion when I'm like functioning or having conversations with other beings. I experience a lot of pain due to being an empath or an HSP. So um even the voices that come out of people if they say stuff to me causes pain inside of my being. So when I'm using guarding doorways to keep this from happening inside my own being, is it wrong to use aversion to do that? Because I know aversion is one of the things that you're not supposed to indulge in with the teachings.
Yeah, let's talk about that at another time so that I can help people to understand this. Because this is, after someone has already understood the Eightfold Path, then we can talk about something like that. So maybe at a break or when we spend time together next week or whatever, something like that would be a good time to be able to talk about that.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Hmm. Oh, ones with the tapes actually work better, but you can use those too. Not yet. No, it is. This takes a second to engage.
Okay.
There it goes.
Thank
And
you.
by the way, this is for the people online because, of course, we can hear you just fine. It's for the people to participate online. There's people joining us.
Sure.
Mhm.
Welcome to Bay Area.
Mhm.
And yeah, so I have a question about this self and what's the personal existent view. Is it this true self or the same or they are different? Because
Yeah, there's no such thing as a true self. That's what people sometimes are going around the world trying to do. They're trying to find their true self, where what the Buddha is teaching you is that doesn't actually exist. That's why people get in this downward spiral of thinking that there is a true self. And now they feel lost and confused. They feel like they don't know who they are. And they
Right.
go out on this journey to try to find themselves. And then after a certain period of time, they might think that they've done that. And they say, like, oh, I found myself. What they really found is a new job, new hobby, new activities, new friends, things like this. But when all of that stuff changes, they're right back in the same problem again. They don't know who they are because all that stuff has changed. So
Right.
that's why the Buddha is teaching you not to cling to any of this stuff as who you are, is because as soon as you do, when it changes, you're going to be uncomfortable and experiencing discontentedness.
right. And because you just mentioned like 10 feathers, and the first one is like a personal existent view, and usually it's what to me, I'm trying to working on that one
Mhm.
and focusly try to focus on working on that one. Like I have a question about what exactly is like a personal existent view and what exactly this self here means. Like because
Mhm.
when I working on personal existent view, from like what you just talked about, it's like two things. One is about self-image, right?
Mhm.
That the body things.
Mhm.
The part is identity, right? What am I? Like
Mhm.
I'm a husband, I'm a son, or get a job, right? I work somewhere. Right? So this is like the two thing I understand that okay, this is like about a self, like a two thing about a self.
Yeah.
But like when I also think deeper, like for example, other feathers like a conceit, it's also about a self because I compare myself with others. I
Mhm.
did some like a comparison, right? So this is also cause like issues. So then my question is, what exactly the first feathers? Because
Mhm.
like to me, I feel like all the 10 feathers is about a self.
Mhm. Okay.
So I'm a bit like confused on what exactly those.
Okay, so normally when I teach it here, I just talk about self image and self identity as being what the mind clings to. But in reality, what the Buddha is teaching you, and I usually teach this in other programs, but I can share it here too, is it's something called the five aggregates or the five criteria, the five elements that make a human being, or make a living being a living being. Is that you have physical form, you have feelings, you have perceptions, which are your views and opinions about the world. You have what's called volitional formations, which are your choices and decisions. And then there's the consciousness or the mind itself. So the unenlightened mind can cling to any number of these aggregates as who you think you are as a person. So you can cling to this physical form, which is what we've been talking about. You can cling to your feelings, like I am angry, I am frustrated. No, that's not actually true because there's no I here. It's that the mind is experiencing anger. Your perceptions, your views and opinions. I am a Democrat. I am a Republican. I am this. I am that. And now, when you cling to those perceptions as who you think you are, you'll go out into the world and fight and argue and be upset and angry when people are saying something like, all Democrats are this or all Republicans are that. Then someone will be really angry or frustrated because they're clinging to their perceptions of who they think they are as a person. Their views and opinions have been adopted in their mind of who they think they are. There's now a label associated with that. Same thing with choices and decisions or volitional formations. I gave that example about like using drugs and alcohol. Someone could cling to that as who they think they are. And then there's the mind, the self identity. So this is all personal existence view. And that, along with conceit, this is why you're seeing the connection between these, is what we refer to as the ego. The word ego didn't exist during the lifetime of the Buddha, so he didn't use it. But he rightfully separated it out into two separate fetters like this because the symptoms are different between personal existence view and conceit, and the techniques that you need in order to uproot it and eliminate it out of the mind are different between these two fetters. So they are completely different fetters, but whenever one fetter is involved, oftentimes there's another one involved as well. It's very rarely any one round of discontentedness is just one fetter. It's typically more than one fetter. So that's why you're seeing the connection between these.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Mhm. Okay. So I think that's all of our questions. I don't see any online either. Let me just check. See any here either. Okay. So let's go to the next part, which is helping you guys to understand one more building block, and then we can explain the Four Noble Truths and discuss those. So there's these words that you need to be able to understand what the Buddha is describing here. When he talks about craving, desire, attachment, wants, expectation, grasping, holding, clinging, this is where the mind is longing, yearning, chasing after the objects of its affection, pulling towards the objects of its affection, thinking that the next new shiny object waiting around the corner is going to provide some kind of lasting satisfaction. So the mind chases it and chases it and chases it. It's almost like an unquenchable thirst. The mind is like, what do I need to be happy here? Oh, more money. That's what'll fix everything. Let me get some more money. So the mind will chase after that for a while. And then it's like, that didn't work. What do I need here? Oh, a new boyfriend, a new girlfriend. That'll fix everything. Let me get one of those. And you might chase after that for a while. And then the mind's like, what do I need to feel happy? Let me go on a vacation. That's what'll fix everything. Let me get that. So the mind chases and chases and chases. If you've ever been in the mall and you saw like a brand new pair of shoes or a new phone or some new jewelry or new clothes, and you're like, I just gotta get that. I want that so badly. And you think that everything's going to be perfect if you can just get that thing. That's the craving, desire, attachment, not the object itself, but the way that the mind is longing, yearning for the object. You guys know what I'm talking about? Have you seen this in your mind where you're longing, yearning for things? Okay. So now that you guys understand this, now we can explore the Four Noble Truths. Because in four simple statements, you're going to understand the problem, the cause, the elimination, and the path forward. You can have a real breakthrough to understanding what the Buddha discovered here so that you can understand what's causing these feelings. Because you'll never actually eliminate them and experience enlightenment if you don't understand what's causing them. So the first noble truth is explaining the problem. The problem is that everyone that is unenlightened will experience discontentedness. That's the problem that you're experiencing, conditioned feelings, that your mind is happy and excited based on some condition. But then when that condition isn't met, now you're angry and sad and frustrated, or you're irritated or feeling uncomfortable or embarrassed or disappointed or stress and anxiety. Your mind's bouncing around up and down and up and down. It's not content and stable and steady. It's not cheerful all the time. So this is the problem in the first noble truth. The second noble truth is explaining the cause of that problem. Discontentedness is caused by our own cravings, desires, attachments, because the mind wants everything to be permanent when everything in the world is impermanent. I'm going to say that again, and I'm going to use some different examples here to be able to help you see this. So the discontentedness, the pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and neither painful nor pleasant, is being caused by craving, desire, attachment, the longing, the yearning, the chasing after the objects of your affection, because the mind wants things to be permanent when everything in the world is actually impermanent. Okay, so here's some examples for you. Think back to maybe like a boyfriend or girlfriend that you first got together with. You might have been so happy or excited when you guys got together. They were calling you and checking in on you. They were showing you affection. They were inviting you to the movies, to dinner. Maybe you're going to the park, taking nice walks. You're having great conversations. You're maybe even having intimate contact at different times, right? You're having all these pleasant feelings, especially early on in the relationship. But then over time, the relationship deteriorated and it fell apart and you guys broke up. And now you might have been experiencing painful feelings like anger or sadness or frustration or some other discontent feeling. You might have been lonely or bored or missing this person. This wasn't your love that was causing that. That was the mind holding on and craving permanence. That as long as the mind was getting what it wanted and what it expected, the mind was getting pleasant feelings. But when the mind doesn't get what it wants or what it expects, the cravings aren't being fulfilled. That's where the craving is not getting fulfilled and you experience the painful feelings, right? So the mind can only experience happiness if it gets what it wants, but you can't get what you want all the time because of impermanence. So the mind can only experience conditioned pleasant feelings when it gets what it wants. But when that's not the case, you'll experience the painful feelings. So the mind wanted this person to be in your life permanently. So one of the ways to say this is yes, that the mind craves permanence. Another way to say is that the mind does not like impermanence. It doesn't like change. It doesn't like when things are changing in your life. You can look throughout your life and all the different things that you've experienced. The times that you were struggling the most is when your jobs were changing, when your relationships were changing, when your living location was changing. These were all very challenging times for you because your mind didn't like change, even when you were making the decision to implement that change. Here's another one with relationships. If you've had someone close to you that has died, like grandma, grandpa, mom or dad, brothers or sisters, you might have grieved or had sorrow during that period of time. And you're not a bad person that is what occurred, but it wasn't your love or your care or your concern that was causing that. That was your mind holding on and craving permanence. That as long as grandma and grandpa were alive, your mind's getting what you wanted. So you got a certain amount of pleasant feelings. But when your mind experienced this impermanence, you didn't like that. And your mind now experienced the grief and the sorrow and the sadness. And people oftentimes think that's their love that's causing it, but it's not. And you can see this like at a wedding. If you've ever been to a wedding and you see people crying at a wedding, well, if this is love, it's like, this is wonderful. Someone's going off into the world and starting a new life and they're having a great relationship. This is wonderful. We should be joyful, right? But no, mom and dad and brothers and sisters and different people are crying at the wedding because they're confronted with this impermanence, realizing that their son and daughter are not permanent, or that their friend or their brother or sister are not permanent. Now they're grieving and sad at the wedding. Or if you've seen children get dropped off at school, or if you can remember getting dropped off at school, your parents might have been grieving, or you might have been grieving. Again, if it's love, it's like, hey, this is wonderful. This kid's going off to school. They're getting an education. This is outstanding, right? But no, mom and dad might be crying, right? And the kids are crying because they're holding on to mom and dad thinking that they're permanent. Even when you get dropped off at university, I remember when I got dropped off, there were kids that were crying and their parents were crying, even at university, right? Because their mind hadn't let go yet, right? So this is with relationships. You can see the mind's craving permanence. But let me give you an example that doesn't involve relationships so you can see this. Think if you bought a brand new car. What was your favorite car? You just wanting this car for a long time. You saved up all your money for 10 years, shoving money under your mattress in your house. And you got all this money and you went down to the dealership and you purchased this car and you drove off the parking lot and everybody was looking at you like, wow, look at him. He's got that new car. He's so successful. Wow, look at her. She's so successful. And you're feeling so proud driving your car and you drive it to a store and you go inside and you come out and there's a scratch on your car. You might be frustrated or angry. It's not the scratch that's causing that. And it's not the person who scratched your car. It's the mind craving permanence and wants this car to be permanently beautiful. And the mind's not getting what it wants here. It sees this scratch and now you're angry or frustrated. And you might start blaming other people because that's what the mind typically does when it experiences this, that this car is going to change. The paint's going to fade. The tires are going to need to be changed. The upholstery is going to get ripped and torn. But if you crave permanence, when you're experiencing this impermanence, your mind won't like it. And that's where you'll experience the anger and the frustration. So you need to be able to peer into this and see this for yourself. I can give you example after example after example, right? There's been many students that needed help to be able to see this over the years. So I invite you to take some time to look at your own life. Maybe there was a certain situation recently where you've been angry or frustrated because you need to be able to see this for yourself. It could have been this morning or yesterday or last week. What was it that your mind was longing, yearning for? Because at that time, you might have been trying to blame someone else. That's what the mind does. It blames other people for the feelings that you're experiencing. But you need to see the truth that it's your mind's craving, desire, attachment that's causing this. So, what was it that you were wanting and you were expecting? And if you would have gotten it, you would have been happy. But because you didn't get what you wanted, the mind was angry or frustrated. And if you have trouble seeing this, when we get to the question period, let me know because I'll help you to see it. I had one student one time that contacted me and they said, David, I know that you teach that it's my own mind that's causing these feelings because that's what I'm teaching you guys. And I said, yeah, that's what I teach. They said, well, I know you teach that it's my own mind that's causing these feelings, but I'm pretty sure it's my wife and I need your help. And I said, okay, I'll help you. What do you got going on? And they said, well, I went to work the other day and my house looked really beautiful. And I came home and my wife had this craft project all over the house. And I got frustrated when I walked in. How did my mind cause this? I wasn't even there. She's the one who messed up the house. Didn't she cause me to be frustrated? And I said, no, she didn't cause it. It was your mind craving permanence. You expected the house to look exactly the same when you came home as when you went to work. The only thing you're experiencing is change. That's it. When it goes from sun to rain, all you're experiencing is change. But the mind doesn't like that. When it goes from your bank account being here and it goes down here, all you're experiencing is change. When you go to work and your house looks a certain way and you come home and it looks different, all that is change. And the mind doesn't like that. So you need to be able to peer into this and see the truth for yourself. Because as long as you don't understand the second noble truth, you will function unskillfully. You will firmly believe that it's other people who are causing these feelings. And what you'll do is you'll have aversion, where you will push people or you will push a situation away. You might have pushed away friends or family out of your life, thinking that that's going to solve the problem. But you can see that that didn't solve your problem because you still get angry, you still get frustrated, you still get annoyed. If they were the true cause of your problem, when you push them out of your life, you would be peaceful and joyful from that point forward. Or the second thing you'll do when you don't understand the second noble truth is you'll be bitter and harsh and hostile to people through your intentions, your speech, and your actions, especially the people close to you, your parents, your siblings, your life partner, your children. It's like an animal growling and roaring at another animal, trying to fear it into doing things your way. And that doesn't work because you're just going to damage your relationships. And then the third thing you'll do is you'll start putting your expectations on people. You'll start trying to pressure them to do things your way. This is the mind trying to get its cravings fulfilled because it wants people to do things a certain way. And when they don't do things your way, you push them out of your life. Or you're bitter, harsh, and hostile to them, trying to fear them to do it your way. Or you'll put your expectations on them, trying to control them to do it your way. But the problem with this is there's 8 billion people in the world. You can't convince them all to do it your way, right? There's only actually one person in the world who does things your way 100% of the time. Do you know who that person is? Yourself, even though there is no self, right? It's this being who you are right now. That's the only being who actually does things your way all the time. So it's only a matter of time that you're going to encounter someone who doesn't do things your way. That's why when you first start a relationship, everything's so wonderful because you haven't seen this person very much and you don't really know them very much. So all your expectations are getting met because you don't have any expectations. But then as you know this person for 3 months, 6 months, a year, you're in a relationship with this person, you start seeing things that you didn't see before. And now you have these expectations of them doing it a certain way, and they're not doing it your way. And now you get more and more frustrated the more time you spend with them. And that's why you break up because the mind thinks, I can't even deal with this person anymore. They're not doing it my way. Right. And this is why you've been in broken relationship after broken relationship. So if you're interested in getting to harmonious relationships with all the people around you, you need to understand impermanence, that everybody's going to do things differently than you, and that's okay, right? And then understand the second noble truth, that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. And if you're having difficulty seeing this, let me know, and I will help you when we get to the question period, because there's been plenty of students that need help to be able to see that it's their own mind causing these feelings. I mean, you could think back to when we were a child, right? When we wanted chocolate and ice cream. We begged mommy and daddy for chocolate and ice cream and they gave it to us. And we were so happy and excited. Maybe for 2 or 3 days, they were giving us chocolate and ice cream. But at the third or fourth day, we said, mommy, daddy, can I have chocolate and ice cream? And they said, no, you can't have it. We were so angry. We thought they were the ones making us angry, when in reality, it was our own mind. So I'm sure you've been in knockdown, drag out arguments where you're trying to convince people to stop doing what they're doing, or else you're going to keep getting angry, right? But it wasn't them that was causing you to be angry. Now, they surely could have been doing something that's unwise, right? They could be doing something unwise, but that's not what's causing your mind to be angry. Your mind's craving for everyone to do it this way. And if they do it this way, you're happy. But if they don't do it that way, you're angry or frustrated. So I'm sure you've been angry and frustrated and maybe arguing with people, trying to convince them to stop doing it that way. And you can look back over the course of your life, every single time you've ever been angry, there's been craving, desire, attachment. There's a craving for permanence. And if you can see this, you can have a real breakthrough today, because then that's where the third noble truth comes in. That if you can understand that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings, then the power of that is that you can eliminate it. If it was everybody else that was causing these feelings, you'd never be able to eliminate them. So the third noble truth is explaining to you that the elimination of discontentedness is possible by eliminating craving, desire, attachment. Because if you can eliminate the cause, then you can eliminate the effect. Now, this craving, desire, attachment is the mind's longing, yearning, the chasing after the objects of your affection, and only being happy when you get what you want. And when your mind's not doing that, sometimes people say, well, wouldn't I swing to the other side where I'm dull, lethargic, and really unmotivated to do anything in the world? Well, you might, but that's not what the Buddha is teaching you. He's teaching you to come to the middle where you can gradually pursue your goals and objectives through wise decision making. And you're not forming your feelings on whether or not you get that thing or not. So this third noble truth is explaining to you, if you eliminate the cause, you'll eliminate the effect, right? And you can independently verify this too. Because once again, think back to that boyfriend or girlfriend that you first broke up with. When you broke up, you were angry, you were frustrated, lonely and bored and missing this person. But at some point, your mind let go. And that's where your peace and your joy came in. And that's what the Buddha is teaching you in the third noble truth, is you need to train your mind to let go. Because when you were like, you know what, if he wants to be with someone else, so be it. And you let go. Or if she wants to live in another part of the world, so be it. And you let go. And that's where your peace and your joy came back. But as long as you were holding on and craving permanence, you couldn't be peaceful. And that was a week or two or a month or two. Sometimes I talk to people 5-10 years after a breakup, they're still disgruntled. They're still resentful that this person is no longer in their life. They're still missing that person and lonely because they want that person in their life. Their mind still hasn't let go. So the Buddha is teaching you in the third noble truth to eliminate your cravings, desires, attachments. That's what's going to eliminate your discontentedness. But the problem is that the unenlightened mind doesn't know how to do that. It hasn't been trained to do that. And that's where the fourth noble truth comes in. This is the complete perfect plan that's guiding you in how to actually train your mind to let go. The Eightfold Path, there's 8 individual steps that are going to train your mind how to let go so that you don't keep holding on and craving permanence. And it starts with right view. Establishing right view is to understand that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings, that it's your own craving, desire, attachment, the mind holding on and craving permanence. Wrong view would be to blame other people for the feelings that you're having. As long as you keep doing that, you'll never get to enlightenment. You'll never get to the peace and joy because you're looking in the wrong place. You're going to be trying to change mom and dad. You're going to try to change brothers and sisters. You're going to try to change your life partner. You're going to keep trying to change other people around you, try to get them to do things your way. You'll never get to peace and joy this way. But if you can establish right view, where you understand that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings, now you can work on the real problem. You can actually implement the real solution and you can experience improvement. So right view is to understand that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. And to practice right view is to now and forever always look inward. Whenever you're experiencing discontentedness, don't look externally. right? You show up to the airport and you're so excited to go to Thailand. You just can't wait to go to Thailand. And you show up and the ticket person says, "Oh, I'm so sorry, sir. I'm sorry, ma'am. Your flight's delayed. It's going to be another 3 hours before you can check in because your flight's not taking off anytime soon." Well, if you notice anger and frustration coming up, it's not the airline company that's causing that. It's your mind craving. I want every single airplane to take off on time, especially the ones I'm on. That's the way the mind thinks, right? Everyone else's plane, they can be late, but my plane needs to be on time. But if you travel enough, you're going to experience impermanence, right? There's going to be maintenance issues, weather issues, crew issues. It's going to happen. Nowadays, there's wars that are canceling airplanes, right? So you need to be able to understand the world is full of impermanence. And when you're experiencing that discontentedness, instead of sitting in the waiting room, being disgruntled and frustrated and angry at the airline company, start looking inward, figure out what is my craving here, and then train your mind to let that go, understanding impermanence. And now you can be peaceful and joyful. And if you do that enough through this Eightfold Path, eventually you'll never get angry. It just doesn't arise. For an enlightened being, there's nothing that can cause anger. It just doesn't exist. But it starts with this right view. Okay. So I encourage you guys to look inward rather than externally, because there's nothing external that's causing these feelings. It's all inward. So before we move on to the next factor, I would like to pause and see if you guys have any questions about the Four Noble Truths. Anything you guys would like to ask? No questions? Okay. So now, after you understand right view, we can move on to right intention. And not all of these take the same amount of time to teach. This one takes a long time to teach. All the rest of them are actually pretty straightforward. So I'm going to teach you guys the right intention, because this is the next piece that you need after you establish right view and you understand that it's your mind that's causing these feelings. Here's the words of the Buddha. And what, monks, is right intention? The intention of renunciation, the intention of non-ill will, the intention of harmlessness. This, monks, is called right intention. So here there's three things: renunciation, non-ill will, and harmlessness. Renunciation is being willing to let go of your false ideas, your false beliefs, your false opinions and views, and your unwholesomeness. There's a certain amount of unwholesome moral conduct that you have right now that you need to clean that up. And if you just cling to these types of things and you're unwilling to let them go, then you're not going to ever be able to experience enlightenment. Because remember, the Buddha is giving you the plan here of how to get to enlightenment. So renunciation is the willingness to let go. You need to be willing to let go of your false ideas, false opinions, false beliefs. Because if you're currently experiencing discontentedness, like anger, sadness, frustration, and others, there's certain things that are in your mind that are untrue, and you need to be willing to let those go. One of the first false beliefs that you need to let go of is the belief that other people are causing you to be angry or frustrated. As long as you hold on to that and you don't renunciate that, you're going to not get to enlightenment. But the way the teachings of the Buddha are is you're not eliminating your false beliefs by bringing in new beliefs. You're actually bringing in wisdom. And when you bring in wisdom that you've independently verified and you see that it conflicts with things that you've believed your whole life, you need to be willing to let go of those beliefs. And now you have wisdom. By the time you get to enlightenment, you actually won't have any beliefs anymore. You will actually know 100% what is true about this world and what is untrue about this world. So you need to be willing to let go of your false ideas, false beliefs, false opinions, and false views. That's to practice the intention of renunciation and your unwholesome moral conduct, because there's a certain amount of unwholesome moral conduct that an unenlightened being will experience and be practicing. Because as long as you're putting that out, it's just going to keep coming back to you. Then there's the intention of non-ill will. The way that English works is that whenever you see a double negative, it's a positive. So non-ill will is the same as saying goodwill. So this is the intention of goodwill towards all beings. This is loving kindness towards all beings. You need to practice that intention or the thinking or the thought of goodwill towards all beings. Then there's the intention of harmlessness, where you're disinterested or incapable of causing harm to others. Because as long as you cause harm to others, this harm is going to come back to you. Now, you can't cause other people to be discontent. Just like you cause your own discontentedness, if someone blames you for causing them to be angry or frustrated, you're not causing them to be angry or frustrated. It's their own mind that's causing that. But you can cause people harm. Causing someone harm is to cause harm to their physical body, to their material possessions, or their reputation. If you're causing harm to someone's physical body, their material possessions, or their reputation, they're going to want to cause you harm back. And now you're going to experience that harm coming back to you. This is called unwholesome karma. So you're not interested in causing harm because this harm is just going to come back to you. So you need to practice the intention, the thinking, or the thought of harmlessness, where you're disinterested or incapable of causing harm to other people. This is right intention. So now, just to kind of summarize what it is that we were talking about, is right view is the Four Noble Truths, where you're accepting responsibility for your feelings, your intentions, your speech, and your actions. Because oftentimes that's not what we do in the unenlightened state. We blame others for what it is that we're experiencing. You need to accept that this is all coming from your own mind. You need to be able to see that for yourself, accepting responsibility for yourself, for your own mind. Then there's right intention. Right intention is to practice the intention of renunciation, non-ill will, and harmlessness. This is going to help you to be able to produce the right thinking or the right thought, where you're willing to let go of your false ideas, false beliefs, false opinions, and views, because there are certain things that your mind's holding on to that you're going to need to bring in wisdom and let those things go. Essentially, you need to keep an open mind that you don't currently understand everything there is to know about the world. Then there's the intention of non-ill will or loving kindness, where you have a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. And then you practice the intention of harmlessness, where you're disinterested or incapable of causing harm to others. This is going to develop what's called the wisdom of the Eightfold Path. This is the foundation that we're now going to build on for the rest of today. But I'm going to stop here and see if you guys have any questions on the right view or right intention. Anything you guys would like to ask? No questions? Okay. Vibha?
The right intention of renunciation, trying to let go of any strong feelings, let go of attachments. But it's sometimes it's not, I guess, clear what the attachments are, or it's not clear what the feelings are, what the strong feelings are, or the mind not is a hard time, I guess, trying to let go, or even trying to get to the point of understanding that this is what you have to let go. Like some things seem easier to let go, like attachment to food or attachment to your house or cars or money and stuff like that. But some attachments and some feelings is just harder to let go of, like say attachment to your family or attachment to your job or things like that. So how do you kind of, and right intention, as you said, kind of is like one of the foundations of right speech and other all the other things here. So how do you kind of develop right intention to a point where you are able to kind of, if not fully let go, at least reduce the attachments to a level where it doesn't come out as much in your speech or other actions?
That's where this whole path works together. It's not that you're mastering one step before you move on to the other. It's 8 individual dials that you're constantly tweaking. So the mental discipline section is going to actually help you to be able to implement the moral conduct. And it's all built on the wisdom section. That here in the wisdom section, you need to have the intention and to understand that it's wise for you to have these intentions. But in terms of you actually being able to cultivate these intentions, you need to have right mindfulness and right effort. That's where the mental discipline section comes in. It's already on.
I think that it's not the idea go of those things, because then that would be that other, it would not be the middle path. I think that the idea is to watch where you are getting discontent in the process and then work on that by going inwards, right?
That's not true. You actually are letting go, but letting go doesn't mean you end the relationship. That's not what that means. It doesn't mean that you stop having a house or you stop having a car. It means that you don't crave permanence, that you don't base your feelings on it. So, like if a husband is putting expectations on their wife and trying to control this person to do things their way, that's the craving, desire, attachment. The mind can restrain itself from doing that and realize, no, this is an independent being. She needs to make her own decisions, and it's not up to me to try to control what she chooses to do. And this is part of practicing letting go, that you're not trying to control this person, and that's letting go. So it's not that you end the relationship, it's that you train your mind to not crave permanence and for this person to do things my way. And this is more of what we'll talk about next weekend with the Harmony of Relationships course. But these things, you're mentally letting them go. So, for example, like this mobile phone, right? At one point, I was attached to the mobile phone. I wanted it to be permanent. And when I left my house one day without it, I felt this fear. It came up in my mind. And I realized, oh my gosh, I'm attached to my phone. So I needed to train my mind to let it go, right? Let it go mentally, where I'm not craving this to be permanent any longer. And there's certain training that you employ to be able to train your mind to do that. But it doesn't mean that you eliminate the device. You're going to need this device nowadays to be able to communicate and accomplish the things you need to accomplish. But you need to let go from within your mind that craving for permanence. That's what it means to let go. It's already on, Tara.
To add to that, I'm confused in the ways of helping the mind to understand what to do in these situations. Also, so if I'm having a conversation or something and it goes wrong, how do I adjust my intentions to help the situation? Like, do I just like if it's rude, I would walk away, hurt that person because I just left because I can't handle it. That would be rude and give someone physical pain probably. Or if you're in these situations, is the best course to just say nothing and walk away because you can't handle it and you will experience pain? Or should you make the effort to help the situation and help that person? I mean, which is better? Because in most of the situations, you know where you would cause pain by just leaving, but in other situations, your body physically can't handle staying there any longer because you're experiencing pain. So to have the right intention, I don't understand how you do something when it's going to cause pain either one way or the other.
Okay. So this is a little bit of the moral conduct, but we can talk about it here. If you're in a conversation and you leave that conversation and that person experiences painful feelings because of it, you're not causing that. That is their mind that's causing that. And what people will say is that it's rude to leave out of a conversation because that's their way of trying to lasso you in and keep you in the conversation. But as you're going to see with right speech, that it might not be the proper time to have a conversation. That if their mind is angry and hostile and bitter and harsh, you're not going to accomplish anything by sitting there in that conversation. The best thing you can do is choose to walk away, let your mind calm down, let their mind calm down. And then after that, you guys come back together and that's where you talk and you can resolve whatever it is that you're talking about. So you stepping away in your mind experiencing painful feelings, that's your mind that's causing that. And that's important for you to be able to do that, is train your mind to let go, is not hold on to this conversation and this person. And it's also helpful for their mind too, that if you walk away and they get angry that you've walked away, that's because of their craving. And they're not going to actually eliminate their craving by you staying in the conversation. Because one of the things that you need to do in order to eliminate a craving is distance yourself from the object that it's craving. So when I realized that I was attached to my phone, the thing that I did was I distanced myself from it. I went out without it for 6 hours, where I just would go outside multiple times without my phone and train my mind that it's okay to go outside without the phone. Because I was already happy going outside with the phone, but now I needed to train my mind to be happy without the phone too. So this person, if they're only happy if you're in a conversation with them, and they're not happy when you're away, that means they're attached to you. And they're not going to eliminate that attachment by you staying in the conversation. They're going to need to experience you walking away. And they'll get angrier, but you're not causing that. And that'll help you to be able to see that it's helpful for you, and it's helping you to be able to see you're making a wise decision to be able to give their mind the opportunity to let go. And this is the most loving and kind thing that you can do for somebody, is create an environment where they have the opportunity to eliminate their cravings. But you'll never uh, allow them to extinguish their craving as long as you just stay there. And you'll still paralyzed. And this is why craving produces unwholesome results, because as long as you cling to this conversation and cling to this relationship, you won't leave and step away from it. And now it just gets worse and worse and worse and worse.
Okay, I understand that. Thank you. But I also don't understand if it is love that we're avoiding and it's the right intention to walk away, why is that not work? Because a lot of people that love each other walk away and it was the wrong choice. And later on, they realize that too late. Somebody could go get in a car crash and die if you walked away from each other out of love or out of wrong intention.
But that's their choice to do that. It's not your choice to leave out of the conversation that then they went and got in a car accident and died. It's not because of your choice to leave the conversation that they then died. It was their choice to get in the car and drive while they were angry. That's what led to them getting in a car accident and now they're dead. It's not because you chose to leave out of the conversation.
I know, but I don't know how you combat the anger to either slam the door in somebody's face and leave or sit down and calm down with each other and then continue discussing if it is to do with love and the wrong intention. I just don't know how to make these things work in this being's life so a bad thing like a car wreck does not happen. I mean, there's got to be a way to like, I don't know. This is just my thinking is I need your teachings and a version of Buddha teachings for dummies because I need more intricate pieces of things that you should do in these situations, in conversations, in scenarios where you're dealing with human beings that have lives and who mean something, and you want this to come to a good experience, or you want it to, work. You know, you don't want people to die. So
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm not teaching anybody to slam a door in somebody's face and walk away from the conversation. That's not what I'm teaching at all. What I'm teaching you is to not cling to the conversation, don't cling to the relationship and feel that you're responsible for what the other person's experiencing. If they're experiencing anger and frustration, it's their own mind that's causing that. And you've got to be able to practice on your own to not have attachment in this situation and understand that they're causing their own anger, and whatever decisions they make, they are responsible for those. One of the things that's pervasive in US culture, and you guys are all living here in the US, is people think that they're responsible for other people's actions. I mean, this is even comes down to the legal system that, there's situations where people get sued and held financially responsible for, doing things, that you had nothing to do with the situation. It was the other person's decisions that led to that result, and now someone is being held responsible financially. This is the unfortunate part of the culture of America, that the culture is not understanding the natural laws. And this is why there's so many struggles and difficulties here in this country. There's so many people that are really struggling with mental health issues. This is just a lack of wisdom and lack of training that the mind has. So you can have loving kindness and compassion and still choose to walk away from somebody. And I can give you some examples of that. I usually talk about it when we get to the talk that I'm going to have on Monday, but we can talk about it if you guys would like. Would you like to talk about that now or another time?
yeah, the major thing that I just need a little bit of knowledge or clarification is well, I'm kind of offended because the Buddha teachings don't go towards love as a way of like a religion. I believe in love is my religion because everything I do, I know exists around love. But Buddhist teachings goes towards wisdom, and I understand that because if you're thinking wisely, then you don't allow feelings to consume you from love, and that's what I like about Buddhism. But I don't know what I'm trying to say. It's just that I think, and I don't want to sound sexist, but I think females fall towards love more to perform in life. They use their emotions a lot more than maybe men do. I don't know if that's right or not. That's just the way my opinion is right now. So I would just like, yeah, we could talk about that more. I know what I have to do to clear my mind up to stop the feelings from happening, but it's just not that easy for me. I just can't. I do everything through feelings and love, so I can't function just being wise and using knowledge all the time.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that the teachings of the Buddha don't lean towards love because his teachings are all about love. In fact, that's what right intention is about, having the intention of non ill will, which non ill will is goodwill or loving kindness, right at the very beginning of his path. And I understand it's challenging for you to understand the path and practice the path. That's what that fetter of ignorance is that we talked about yesterday, that unknowing of true reality, that you just don't understand what you don't understand. For me, it's perfectly understandable, but and that's why I'm here, to be able to help you guys to understand it. So of course it's challenging for you because your mind doesn't have this wisdom that you need in order to be able to practice what the Buddha is teaching you. These feelings that you have, oftentimes, again, here in the US culture, people think that feelings are good. In fact, if you watch a speech where somebody becomes very emotional in their speech, someone might be like, oh, that was such a good speech, and you feel like, wow, they were so impassioned and they were crying and they were upset or they were angry in their speech. And somehow that, for some people here in the US, translates to, wow, that was a really great speech. Well, what you need to be able to see is that whenever your mind's doing that, that's not your love. The feelings of anger and frustration, or the sadness that you experience when you see a human or an animal struggling, that's not your love. That's your craving, desire, attachment. What the Buddhist teachings are going to get you to is where you're actually practicing true love. Right now, you're probably not practicing true love 100%. You're having craving, desire, attachment, feeling sad or emotional when you see something happening, and the mind thinks that that's the actual love. But that's not the love. That's the craving, desire, attachment. When you get the craving, desire, attachment, the true love can actually shine through more and more. But you need to be able to understand what true love is. It's not these emotions that you're experiencing. Love is actually not an emotion. It's not a feeling, because a feeling is going to arise, it's going to change, and it's going to fade away, meaning it's temporary. True love is not temporary. It is permanent. And you can't experience a permanent mental state while you're having a certain feeling, because a feeling is going to arise, change, and fade away. The mind's all shaken up, and it's going to have difficulty to think and make wise decisions when you're experiencing those feelings. So the Buddha is helping you to get to a point where you're experiencing true love and you're practicing true love and you're practicing where the mind's completely peaceful and joyful. And of course, you can't get to it just at the snap of a fingers or just by reading books or just watching videos, because that's mostly what you've done so far. We've had some interaction, but not that much interaction. You're going to need to have interaction with a teacher in order to be able to be guided to enlightenment. You can ask Vibhav how many times living here with him and his wife, how much I'm helping them to be able to see the teachings and how to actually practice the teachings. It takes a lot of work. You can do it. You just haven't developed the wisdom yet to be able to actually do it. But I would say your perspective of what the teachings of the Buddha are right now is not 100% true, because you don't yet know the teachings 100%. So whatever opinion you have right now, it doesn't match to what I know the teachings to be. I know that they're nothing but love and kindness and respect and gratitude and appreciation towards other people. That's what enlightened beings have in their mind. But your mind hasn't fully cultivated that wisdom and you're not fully practicing it yet. so you can't really see it so clearly. Mhm.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. The more you learn, the more you practice, the more you'll be able to see these things. Any other questions that you guys have? Okay, so this is a point I actually normally take a break. And when I come back, I'm going to finish up the rest of the Eightfold Path. So let's see, it's 11:35. So why don't we take a break for 15 minutes, which will take us up to 11:50, and then I'll pick up the rest of the Eightfold Path from there. Okay, so thank you guys for your questions, and I'll see you guys at 11:50. Okay. I'm going to continue on helping you guys to understand more here on the Eightfold Path, that we've explored right view and right intention. We've talked about the wisdom section, but now we're going to move into the moral conduct section and the mental discipline section. All of this is built on the wisdom section. Without understanding that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings, why would you ever work on your moral conduct? That bitterness and harshness and hostility that comes out, why would you ever work on that if you thought other people were causing it? So that's why the Buddha starts you off with right view, to understand that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings, so that then you understand the very last thing you're ever interested in is being bitter and harsh and hostile to people, right? This is one of the most loving and kind things that you could do. Talking about love and kindness in the teachings of the Buddha is to work on your own mind, because continuing to be bitter and harsh and hostile with the people around you is to cause harm, right? So that's one of the most loving things you could do, is choose to do this work on your own mind, so that there's not this ripple effect. The way that you treat people with your moral conduct, if you're having unwise moral conduct, it's going to have a ripple effect in your personal and professional relationships. So the Buddha is teaching you this moral conduct to build on top of this wisdom section. So you need to have that wisdom section to realize that it's wise to now improve your moral conduct, that this anger and frustration you're experiencing is actually coming from your own mind. It's not coming from other people. So whenever you're learning the moral conduct from the Buddha, it's important to understand what he's teaching you is the natural law of karma. Sometimes when people learn moral conduct and teachings like this, they think of it as rules or commandments. And that's not what the Buddha is actually teaching you. It's not rules and commandments. It's actually helping you to understand this natural law of cause and effect, or action and result. This is the results of your decisions. Some people call it karma. You might have heard that before. That's the Sanskrit version of this, where the Pali language, the original teachings of the Buddha, are in this Pali language. So we use this word karma. If this translated to just one English word, I would use that because it'd be easier for everyone to understand. But since it doesn't just translate to one English word, I still need to use this word karma. What it means is cause and effect, or action and results, essentially a sequence of events. It's not about who's to blame or who's at fault or anything like that. There's no being who's overseeing this. It's not about punishments and rewards. It's none of that kind of stuff. It's literally a sequence of events, that it's your life, it's your decisions, and it's your results. Whenever you make decisions wisely, you will experience wholesome karma, or wholesome results. And when you make decisions unwisely, you will experience unwholesome karma, or unwholesome results. And when you don't understand this natural law, you'll tend to go out into the world and make unwise decisions. And then when you're experiencing results coming back to you, you'll tend to think that it's other people, and you'll tend to blame other people for the things that you're experiencing. But if you can understand this natural law of karma, you can see the choices and decisions that you make that are leading to any particular results. And now you can make wiser and wiser decisions to experience wholesome results. Where if we think that what we're experiencing in life is good luck or bad luck or destiny or fate, or maybe it's from God or some entity called the universe, or it's other people that are causing us to experience things, then you never actually make the wise decisions to be able to improve what it is that you're experiencing. Because if there's anything that you don't particularly care for that's going on in your life, and you would like to see that change, then all you need to do is cultivate wisdom, make different decisions, and you'll experience different results. But if you don't understand the natural law of karma, you can't make those different decisions. So, for example, if I'm walking down the beach and there's wind that's blowing in my face, and I'm kicking up sand, and this sand is blowing back in my face, and I think, this is good luck or bad luck, or this is destiny or fate, or this is God or some entity called the universe that is causing this, or this is other people that are causing this, then I never cultivate wisdom, make different decisions, and experience different results. I just keep walking down the beach, kicking up sand, and it keeps blowing in my face. But if I understand, what are the decisions that I'm making that's leading to this particular result? Well, now I can just make different decisions and I'll experience different results, right? That's the beauty of the natural law of karma, is that you're experiencing the results of your decisions. And now all you need to do is cultivate wisdom, make different decisions, and you'll experience different results. So the relationships that you have, there's probably a certain amount of difficulties that you're having in your relationships. There's a certain amount of bitterness and harshness and hostility that you put out in your relationships. But if you cultivate wisdom and you make different decisions, you will experience different results, because when you're putting out that bitterness and hostility, that's what's coming back to you. And if you're interested in shutting that down, you're going to need to improve what you're doing. Oftentimes, we think the way to improve our relationships is to change the other person, but you'll never actually solve your problems by trying to change other people. Because once again, there's 8 billion people in the world, and you can't change other people. It's not possible. If someone's going to change, they have to make that decision for themselves. So you're going to need to work on your mind, experience different results through making wiser decisions about how you interact in the world. So that's where the Buddha is teaching you this moral conduct, so that you can learn the wisdom of how to make different decisions, and now you will experience different results. And because he's teaching you the natural laws, they can be independently verified. So I'm going to teach you guys this moral conduct, and I'm going to walk you through in a way that you can independently verify what he's teaching. So here at the top section, this is the Eightfold Path about speech and how he's advising you that it would be wise for you to speak. He says, "In what, monks, is right speech? Refraining from lying, refraining from slander, refraining from harsh speech, refraining from frivolous speech. This is called right speech." So remember from the remember from the Four Noble Truths that the Eightfold Path is designed to help you eliminate your cravings, desires, attachments, the longing, the yearning, the forming your feelings based on any particular object. So this speech that he's talking about eliminating, it's all based in craving, desire, attachment. It's the mind longing, yearning, and it produces unwholesome results. So for example, if you can think back to when we were lying as a child, you might have done a certain amount of lying. That's because there was craving, desire, attachment in the mind. The mind wanted something, and it felt like if it told the truth, you weren't going to get what you wanted. So you lied in order to get what you wanted. But now when people discover your lies, they find you to be untrustworthy and unreliable and undependable. And if you continue to do that, this is where your relationships are going to really struggle. So the Buddha teaches you to speak the truth. And by doing this, people will see you as trustworthy, dependable. And now in your professional career, you can really advance because people see you as being trustworthy, a true speaker, someone to be relied on. So if we continue to lie, that's not going to be the case. If you've done a lot of lying at any time during your life, you might remember how your mind was obsessively trying to figure out what you said to one person versus another. And it was very hard to keep all your lies straight. How could you get to peace and joy if your mind's constantly having to figure out what you say from one person to the next? So by eliminating lying and just speaking the truth, you have nothing to worry about. You can just speak the truth, right? And now you can be dependable and reliable and trustworthy. Then the Buddha teaches you to eliminate slander. Slander or gossip is where you're damaging other people's reputation and you're trying to make yourself look good. That's the craving that you have, is you're trying to make yourself look good by diminishing other people. It's kind of like someone walks into a dark room and everybody's got a candle, and the mind thinks, well, if I put out everyone else's candle, my candle's going to shine brighter. But that's not the case. We're all in a dark room. We need everybody's candle to shine. We don't need to diminish and degrade other people. At the height of this, if you go around doing gossip and slander, you can be murdered. Remember, the teachings of the Buddha aren't teaching you the way the world should be. He's teaching you the way the world is. And he's showing you the natural law of karma, that if you go around gossiping and slandering people, damaging their reputation, these people are going to get very angry because their mind is unenlightened. And you can see, like, investigative reporters in the world, they oftentimes end up dead, right? This is because they're essentially gossiping and slandering, right? And I'm not saying whether they should be doing those things or not doing those things. I'm just sharing with you what the natural law is and why we're seeing the results that we experience. So at the height of gossiping and slandering, people are going to want to murder you potentially. At the very least, if you're gossiping and slandering with people and you get these people used to gossiping and slandering, when your back's turned, what do you think those people are going to be doing? They're going to be gossiping and slandering about you, right? Because you got these people used to gossiping and slandering, and now when you walk away, they're going to be gossiping and slandering about you. So if you're interested in not having people gossip and slander about you, you're going to need to eliminate gossip and slander where you're not doing that. So that's why the Buddha is teaching you that. Then he says refraining from harsh speech. What this is your tone, your tempo, and your word choice. When you're practicing these teachings, and you have craving, desire, attachment in your mind, you'll find it to be very challenging to speak gentle. You'll have a certain harshness and bitterness in the way that you speak with people because you have craving, desire, attachment. So the Buddha is teaching you to eliminate that harshness and hostility. You'll find this to be the most challenging with the people who are closest to you, your parents, your siblings, your life partner, your children. These are the people that you have the most challenges with because that's where you have the deepest cravings, desires, attachments. But you're going to need to pay attention to your tone, tempo, and word choice. And some of you guys speak more than one language. So you're going to need to look at each one of those languages and find ways to speak in a way that's gentle. Because, like the English language, for example, we used to say things like, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, or thank you, or please, or things like this, where a lot of times in modern culture that has kind of fallen away. But you're going to need to bring that into your practice. And even though other people aren't necessarily speaking this way, an enlightened being isn't a follower. If you just conform to what other people are doing in the world, you're going to stay in the darkness and in the anger and the frustration with all of those people. You're going to stay in the stress and anxiety with all of those people. You need to rise above that and realize that you're not interested in conforming to what other people do. You need to see the wisdom in walking around and speaking in a gentle way, speaking with your tone, tempo, and word choice, paying attention to this, and now speak in a way that's gentle. And this is what's going to produce the wholesome results for you because you're not speaking based in craving. And you'll see your relationships improve. Then there's frivolous speech. I don't know if you've ever been this person or you've ever been around this type of person. What frivolous speech is when someone's just like yada 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 yada, just like, oh my gosh, when is this person going to stop talking? It's like not even a conversation. It's like they're broadcasting to you, right? Or maybe you're doing that, right? Where you're just talking and talking and talking. Some people might call this diarrhea of the mouth, right? But the Buddha wouldn't have said that. He calls it frivolous speech or idle chatter, where there isn't any purpose or benefit behind the speech. It's just they have a craving to talk. Well, if you're that kind of person, eventually people are just going to tune you out and they're going to be uninterested in talking with you. You're not going to be very influential in the communities that you spend time in. So you would like to be purposeful and beneficial in the way that you speak. So this is the top part of right speech from the Eightfold Path, where you're learning to eliminate lying, slander, harsh speech, and frivolous speech. And once you really master that and you're doing really well with that, you can go deeper into the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. Because as I shared with you, the Eightfold Path is a core central teaching that everything else plugs into. And this 5 factors of well-spoken speech is a teaching that plugs into right speech. And he gives you a deeper level of understanding here, that he teaches you to speak at the proper time. What you say is true, gentle, beneficial, and with a mind of loving kindness. Speaking at the proper time has 3 aspects to it. Whereas if you have a craving and you're interrupting people, this is based in your craving. And it's not going to produce wholesome results because you don't like it when people interrupt you. So if you went around interrupting other people, it's not going to produce wholesome results in your relationships. The other part is when your mind is angry or frustrated or irritated, that's not the proper time to talk. The only thing that's going to come out is your anger and frustration, and you're going to damage your relationships. And that's not very loving and kind to be bitter and harsh and hostile to people. So if it's not the proper time to speak, you just don't speak. And then the third aspect of this is making sure it's the proper time for the other person. If they're angry and frustrated or irritated or annoyed, it's not the proper time to talk because nothing's going in. You're not having a wonderful conversation here. So you need to make sure that it's the proper time, that you're not interrupting, that your mind is prepared to talk and their mind is prepared to talk. Then whatever you say is true. We talked about that on the top part. And it's not only not telling a deliberate lie, it's also not spreading conspiracy theories and things that you don't know whether they're true or false. You would like to research the things that it is that you're going to share and make sure that you're sharing the truth so that more and more that you know what the truth is and that that's what you share and people know that that's what you're sharing. And then speaking gently, we talked about that on the top side, that you'd like to pay attention to your tone, tempo, and word choice when you're interacting with people. This is going to help you to develop more harmonious relationships. Then you'd like to be beneficial. This is not about the topic that you're talking about. This is the mode or the method of communication, that you'd like to be clear and concise and precise in the way that you're speaking, that you're not having frivolous speech or idle chatter. Because if you're just unpurposefully talking and talking and talking, eventually people are going to tune you out. So you would like to be beneficial or purposeful when you speak. Then you would like to wrap all of this in a mind of loving kindness. Loving kindness is having a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well, where you have active goodwill towards others. The opposite of this would be to speak with inner hate. If you're speaking with inner hate, this is not going to produce wholesome results in your day-to-day life. So you would like to speak with a mind of loving kindness, where you have love and kindness towards all beings around you. And when you're speaking this way, you're going to develop harmonious relationships with all the people around you. Okay, so now this was the intellectual learning part of the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. But remember, the teachings of the Buddha aren't based in belief. These aren't rules and commandments. These are natural laws that you can independently verify. You need to independently verify whether this is true or false. So take a recent conversation that didn't go well for you. Think about that conversation and look at these 5 factors. You can see that you and or the other person wasn't using the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. And that's why the conversation didn't turn out well. Because these natural laws are affecting you whether you're aware of it or not. But then also, don't just stop there. Look at the flip side of this. You've had plenty of conversations that have gone well. Look at those conversations. And you can see that you and or the other person was practicing these 5 factors of well-spoken speech. Maybe at our break that we just took. Maybe you guys had some great conversations with each other. You can see you were speaking at the proper time. What you said was true. It was gentle. It was beneficial. And it was with a mind of loving kindness. And that's why the conversation went well. So you're already practicing these 5 factors in some situations without realizing it. But what you would like to do now is raise it to your level of consciousness where you move to this higher consciousness and you're now consciously practicing these 5 factors, because that's what's going to produce the wholesome results for you. But where you have cravings, desires, attachments, that's where it's going to be hard for you, because that's polluting your mind and it's going to make it very challenging for you to practice something like the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. And that's where the mental discipline section is going to come in to help you to knock down those cravings, so it makes it easier for you to practice the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. So we call this the right speech. But what you might think about this is as right communication, because during the lifetime of the Buddha, all they had was speech. But we have multiple ways of communicating. We have text messages, voicemail, social media posts, emails, all these kinds of things. And you're going to need to apply all these 5 factors in each of these situations. So for example, if you went to a job interview and you like knocked it out of the park and you were speaking in wise ways, and it's like, wow, these people are like, I want to hire this person. They are so awesome. But they went and checked your social media and you're bitter and harsh and hostile in your social media, you're probably not going to get a job, right? Because you're not practicing right speech in all situations. Or say you're really angry and frustrated and you're run over to your keyboard and you're pounding on the keyboard to send out a really hostile and bitter email. It's not the proper time to be communicating in that situation, right? So maybe hit save instead of send. Because once you hit send, it's going to go out into the world and now it's going to produce unwholesome results for you. So hit save, right? And now come back a few days later and look at it, or a few hours later, and decide whether or not it's wise for you to send that email and if it needs to be adjusted in any way. So you would like to practice this as right communication, making sure all your communication is using these 5 factors. Now in Thailand, we have something called barami. This is what you're actually doing by developing your speech to be in this way, is you're developing what's called barami. What this means is the one who people listen to. In Thai villages, there's usually villagers who people know are the village elders, and they're very successful in life. And if you need help, you go talk to the village elders. And when I say they're very successful in life, I don't necessarily mean financially successful, because anybody can go out and make money. That's not really that difficult, right? But what I'm talking about when somebody's successful in life is that they have harmonious relationships. because that's what takes a lot of wisdom to have all harmonious relationships. So if you practice the 5 factors of well-spoken speech, you will establish what's called barami, the one who people listen to. And now people are going to come to you and seek guidance and seek advice. But as long as you're going around causing harm through the way that you interact with people, they're not going to be interested in talking with you. But if you can establish barami, both in your personal life and your professional life, you'll actually see that you're going to have more and more success in your day-to-day interactions. So the way you do that is by practicing the 5 factors of well-spoken speech for an extended period of time. If you do this for 1 week, it's not like you're going to have barami, right? Or 1 month, you're not going to have barami. You're going to need to do this for multiple years. And you'll see that as you interact with people around you, that they know that you're not causing harm through any of your interactions. They won't necessarily know these teachings that you know, but they're functioning through the natural laws. And they can see like, wow, this person's so polite. They're so friendly. They're so wise. They're, so respectful. They're going to be able to see that about you. And now they're going to have more interest in interacting with you both personally and professionally. So in this book that I wrote, that I based this course off of, I have lots of details about all of these things that you can learn. And I suggest you guys read that book. That's why I recommended it to you yesterday. As you're learning and practicing these teachings, it's going to take you time to dial in something like the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. You're not going to be able to just snap your fingers and instantly practice that stuff. So as you're developing your understanding of these teachings and you're dialing it in closer and closer, you might use something like this, that you learn to speak polite, kind, friendly, and respectful in all situations, right? You need the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. That's the natural laws. But while you're in the process of learning those, you might be stuck in a situation and you can't really remember. Maybe you're on the phone with your mom and you're noticing this frustration arise, and you can't be like, hey, mom, hold on a second. I'm getting really angry here. And I know there's these 5 factors. Let me get my book. You're not going to be able to open up your book and start trying to figure out how to talk with mom. So if you can remember to be polite, kind, friendly, and respectful, this will really help you in those situations. But more and more, you would like to dial in these 5 factors. One of the things that I used to do is I used to actually look at these 5 factors in the morning before I would go outside for all my meetings. It just takes like a minute or two to refresh your memory of what they are. And then I would have all my meetings during the morning. And then in the afternoon at lunchtime, I would look at the 5 factors again. And I'd be like, oh, wow, I was really interrupting that guy. I need to get better at that. Or I was like, oh, wow, I was really gentle with that person. That was helpful. I would like to do more of that, right? So you can tweak it. And then in the afternoon, I would start practicing the 5 factors more. And then in the evening, sometimes I would even look at it again. So you're going to need to dial this in and bring it to the forefront of your mind so that you can really practice it in all situations. So this is right speech or right communication. Then there's right action. This is the 4th step. So here's what the Buddha says. In what, monks, is right action? Refraining from taking life, refraining from taking what is not given, refraining from sexual misconduct. This is called right action. So here he's giving you 3 bodily actions that'll cause significant harm. And whenever you're causing harm, this harm is going to come back to you. He's not giving you an exhaustive list of everything and anything that you could ever cause harm with your physical body. But whenever you cause harm, this harm is going to come back to you. So he's giving you 3 impactful ones, and then you're going to need to be intelligent enough to think through the others. Notice he doesn't say, don't walk up to someone and punch them in the face, right? Well, of course, he didn't say that, but you can understand through this step that it would be unwise to do that, because the natural law of karma is that if you punch someone in the face, they're probably going to punch you back, or they're going to pull out a gun or a knife, or their friends or family are going to come attack you, right? This is the results of your decisions of choosing to punch someone in the face. So he's giving you 3 really impactful ones. Notice he doesn't say it would be unwise to drag your suitcase through the aisle of a plane and run over people's feet and bump into their knees. Of course, he didn't say that because planes didn't even exist during his lifetime. So he's just giving you 3 impactful ones, and then you're going to need to apply it in all parts of your life. We're going to explore this some more tomorrow when we get to the 5 precepts, because here he's talking very general and very broad. He's not going into much details, because like one of the things that people say is like, well, what's sexual misconduct? Well, the Buddha teaches that in the 5 precepts. He explains to you things like having sex with minors, having sex outside of relationships that you're in, having sex against somebody's consent, like raping them or something like that. There's all these kinds of things that you could cause harm with your sexual activity. And if you're causing harm, this harm is going to come back to you. I usually like to point out here that it's important to know that when the Buddha taught sexual misconduct, he didn't teach that same gender relationships are harmful, because there's two loyal, loving, consenting adults choosing to have sex with each other, and they're not actually causing harm to anyone. And if you understand the universal truth of impermanence, then you understand that there's never been a time in human history where everybody had sex with the opposite gender, because that would be permanence. That not everybody likes to have sex with the opposite gender. Some people have sex with the same gender. This has been happening all the way from the beginning of human history. You can see it in the Buddha's teachings. He actually talks about it, but he doesn't teach anything about it. He just makes the observation that this is occurring. And then when he talks about sexual misconduct, he doesn't include that. This is how wise he was. 2,500 years ago, he already understood that two loyal, loving, consenting adults choosing to have sex, they're not causing harm to anyone. Where today we have people that will get angry and frustrated, and they're causing it themselves. It's not the other people that are causing that. So if you're someone who has a same gender relationship, or you know someone who does, you're not causing any harm in that situation. And if people are getting mad and angry at you because of that, they're causing it themselves because of their craving for permanence. They want everybody to have sex with the opposite gender. But that's not the world we live in. We live in an impermanent world. So we're going to explore this in more detail tomorrow. But this is right action, ensuring that you're not causing any harm through your bodily actions. Then we have right livelihood. Here the Buddha says, "In what, monks, is right livelihood? Here, monks, the noble disciple, having given up wrong livelihood, keeps himself by right livelihood." What a livelihood is how you choose to sustain your life, how you choose to acquire basic resources to sustain your life. If you take up a livelihood that's causing harm to others, this harm is going to come back to you. So here he just talks very general and very broad, but he goes into more detail in the other parts of his teachings, which I've included here. Because remember, the Eightfold Path is the core central teaching, and then there's these teachings that plug into it. So here, what I'm going to teach you today is what's called the first fold of purification of your livelihood. That the Buddha helps you to be able to understand livelihoods that would cause harm, and helping you to be able to get to a livelihood where you have enthusiasm and ambition and motivation in your livelihood. So this first part, he's teaching you about 5 livelihoods that would cause harm if you chose to do these things: business and weapons, living beings, meat, substances that cause heedlessness, and poisons. Because all of these livelihoods are causing harm to others, that means you're sustaining your life off of causing harm to others. And that means that harm is going to come back to you. But remember, his teachings are independently verifiable, nothing to be believed. These aren't rules or commandments. You need to be able to independently verify these things. So for example, let's just take one of these. I'll show you how to do this. Let's take the substances that cause heedlessness. If I stood on the street corner and I was selling crystal methamphetamine or heroin or cocaine into the community, I'm causing harm to this community, and I'm sustaining my life off of this. That now these people are getting addicted to this substance, and they're going out and stealing and selling their bodies and doing other things like this in order to be able to bring me money so that I can now sustain my life. Well, standing on that street corner, I can very easily get murdered, right? Someone can swing by, a rival drug dealer, or maybe even a drug person who's addicted to drugs or trying to steal. Maybe I could get robbed, I could get murdered, I could get beat up, I could get arrested, I could get addicted to these substances myself. These are all things that can occur as a result of my unwise decisions. Now, what we're talking about here is the natural law of karma, of cause and effect. This is a natural law that is affecting you and functions at a much higher level than human laws, because human laws might say, hey, you can go work at that liquor store. You can be a cashier at that liquor store. We're not going to arrest you for that. The human laws are imperfect because they're created and administered by human beings. But the natural law of karma is functioning at all times at a much higher level. If you understand the natural law of karma, you might understand that it's unwise for you to work as a cashier at that liquor store. because that's very likely to get robbed. People get beat up, people get murdered. At the very least, you have intoxicated clientele that are coming in and out of that place. And now you've got to deal with these people on a daily basis. How can you get to peace and joy when you're having to deal with intoxicated people on a regular basis, right? So this natural law of karma functions at a much higher level. You would be disinterested if you understand this natural law to work in any kind of establishment that sells substances that cause heedlessness. Okay, so this is one part of practicing right livelihood. But then another part of practicing right livelihood to get to the first fold of purification is to eliminate scheming, flattering, hinting, belittling, and pursuing gain with gain. What the Buddha is teaching you to do is how to have enthusiasm and ambition and actually get to a point where you're very successful in your livelihood. So if somebody was scheming, that means they're corrupt and they're doing backhanded things. So let's just say I was a mayor of my town and I was elected to do this job. And now in the background, I'm doing some scheming and some corruption to kind of enrich myself. Well, 10 years, 15 years into this, people find out about that and now they won't reelect me. And now I'm having difficulties to sustain my life and make money because it's well known that I've done this corruption, right? This is what's going to be the results of my decisions of having done this. Then there's flattery. What flattery is where you give insincere comments just to try to get people to buy things or purchase things from you. If you've ever been into a store where you walk in and they're like, oh my gosh, that shirt looks beautiful on you. Oh my gosh, it really accentuates the shape of your face and the colors of your eyes. You know, I've got these earrings over here that'll go really good with that shirt. Would you like to see them? This is flattering. You're just trying to flatter someone to get them to buy things. And if you've ever been in this kind of establishment before, you were kind of like, ugh, I don't even want to go in. It just doesn't feel right. So if you're just trying to flatter people to buy things from you, it's not going to produce wholesome results in your day-to-day life. So in your career, you're going to find that you're struggling and having difficulties in those situations. So that's why the Buddha teaches you to eliminate it. What hinting is where you're not clear and concise in your work and what you're doing. So for example, let's just say all of us are on a project team and we all needed to go brief the boss about what it is that we're working on. Well, if we're hinting around and we're not very clear and concise, we're not going to be able to perform well in our livelihood. Where if we're clear and concise about what it is that we're doing, now our boss can understand what it is that we're working on in our projects and we'll advance through our career much better that way. So you like to be clear and concise in the way that you're communicating. Belittling is to degrade and diminish people in your livelihood, like your coworkers, your customers, your business partner, your competition, people like this. If you're degrading and diminishing your business partners, your coworkers, your competition, your customers, people are going to see this and people aren't going to appreciate it. And you're going to find that you struggle in your livelihood. Sometimes people think that you need to diminish your competition in order to make yourself look good, but this isn't actually true. If somebody actually asks you a question about your competition, a really easy answer is to just say, you know what, I'm not sure 100% what they do, but this is what I can do for you. Here's what I'm able to offer you, right? And then they're either going to be interested in purchasing from you or not, right? And maybe they go check out your competition, right? But if you degrade and diminish your customers, your coworkers, your business partners, your competition, it's not going to go very well for you and you're not going to have such success in your livelihood. So that's why the Buddha teaches you it's unwise to do that. Then he teaches you to not pursue gain with gain. What this is just taking a job for the paycheck. That's all you care about. You don't care about the product or the service. All you want is the money. And that's all that you care about. And if you've ever had that kind of job before, you probably felt really great up front when you first got the job because you were getting all this new money. But then after a few months, it just didn't have the same appeal anymore. And you kind of dragged yourself to work each day and you really didn't enjoy what you were doing. So the Buddha teaches you to have enthusiasm and ambition about the work that you're doing, that you don't just work for the money, but you have this interest to provide this certain product or service. And you can't imagine doing anything else other than that particular thing. Where I live in Thailand, there's people that stand on the street corner and they might be selling mango and sticky rice. and they can't imagine doing anything else other than selling that mango and sticky rice. They might have woke up this morning and they might have went out in their mango grove and selectively picked each individual little mango, brushed it off, put it in their basket. They brought it to the market and they're standing there slicing the mango and putting it over the sticky rice and pouring this warm coconut milk over the sticky rice, and they're handing it to you, and they're collecting their little $1.50 for what it is that they did for you to be able to provide you that mango and sticky rice. And they have a big smile on their face, and they can't imagine doing anything else other than serving you that mango and sticky rice. So what the Buddha is teaching you to be able to do is find your mango and sticky rice. What is your mango and sticky rice that you're going to feel so enthused that you're doing this thing that you can't imagine doing anything else other than that? And you're not doing it for the money. The money doesn't even matter. That you would actually do this thing even if you didn't get paid. That's how much you really enjoy it. But of course, you need to get paid in order to sustain your life. So you're collecting money, but that's secondary to the fact that you just truly enjoy this work that you're doing on a daily basis, right? So you need to find your mango and sticky rice. And you may not be in that job right now. You might not really particularly care for what you're doing, or you might be in between jobs where you're unemployed. If that's the case, I would encourage you to look at these teachings closely, because in our book series, in volume 12, chapter 14, I have the first fold and the second fold of purification that'll help you to be able to be guided towards a livelihood that you'll actually have enthusiasm and ambition in. This here is the first fold of purification, but there's more details in the teachings of the Buddha in volume 12, chapter 14, and you guys can read that. And then if you have questions, just let me know and I'll help you. So this is right livelihood, getting to a point where you thoroughly enjoy the work that you're doing and it doesn't even feel like work anymore. You just enjoy it so much. Because if you have to drag yourself to work each day, you're not going to get to peace and joy, right? So you need to be able to have enthusiasm and ambition about the work that you do each day. So just to summarize this, we have right speech, which you might think about as right communication, where all your communication, whether it's text messages, emails, social media posts, all of these things, you're communicating in a way that is wise and is harmless, eliminating lying, slander, harsh speech, and frivolous speech, and then practicing speaking at the proper time. What you say is true, gentle, beneficial, and with a mind of loving kindness. And understanding you're going to need to gradually dial that in. And in the relationships that you're the closest in, that you'll find the most hard. Your parents, your siblings, your life partner, your children, that'll be the most challenging for you because that's where your strongest cravings are. Then there's right action, ensuring that you're not causing any harm through your bodily actions. And the Buddha gives you those three: killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct. But you need to make sure that you apply this in all situations, even when you're walking through the aisle of an airplane, making sure that you're not bumping into people and dragging your suitcase over their feet. And then you would like to practice right livelihood, where you look at your livelihood and make sure that you're not having business in weapons, living beings, meat, substances that cause heedlessness or poisons. And then you eliminate scheming, flattering, hinting, belittling, and pursuing gain with gain. This is going to help you to get to a livelihood that you have thoroughly enjoy the work that you're doing on a daily basis. Do you guys have any questions on this moral conduct section? For those of you guys online, you can put your questions into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. Oh, you know what? I need to press the button over here.
Can you go into do no harm with the meat?
Sure. So if somebody is selling meat, they're contributing to the death of an individual, a being, an animal, typically. And that is causing harm to that being. And now it's going to cause you harm too. This is how we actually experienced COVID. Apparently, there was a meat market and people were selling animals and meat, and the virus jumped from the animal into the human. And then the people that were closest to that, there was no vaccines, there was no knowledge of how to solve this. And now those were the initial people that actually experienced a lot of death, right? And then a lot of people after that too that weren't even close to that, right? So there's all these viruses that are in the animal world that they're just waiting to get over into the human world. And no matter what people think about the vaccines, it helped us to get to the point where we don't have so much COVID in our community. But there's plenty of viruses waiting for us. That vaccine, while it solved COVID, there's a whole bunch more waiting for us. This is why we have mad cow disease, bird flu, swine flu, HIV. All of these things came from the animal world. This is our choice to be able to now interact with those animals. And now the viruses are coming into the human world. So we haven't really truly solved our problem by having medications and vaccines to be able to address these things, because there's more vaccines that are, or I'm sorry, there's more viruses that are waiting for us. So the Buddha is getting you back to the root cause of what's causing all of these problems, so that if you now learn and practice that, you'll experience improved results. So if somebody's choosing to have business in living beings or meat, they're now, sustaining their life off of causing harm to other beings. So like living beings would be like a dog breeder, right? Or like a horse trainer or something like this. You're now coming in contact with animals that are going to potentially cause you harm. And if you're sustaining your life off of the womb of a cocker spaniel, for example, this being is now having to go through all this pain of having, litter after litter after litter just to help you to sustain your life. And this is like enslaving this being in order to give you some kind of way to sustain your life. So the meat and living beings is causing harm. Or like at one time there was slaves, and there's still slaves in the world. It's just not as prevalent as it once was. And if you choose to sustain your life off of this, it's causing harm to others, and this harm is going to come back to you. You're welcome.
So, not about just sustaining, I guess, not uh, directly pertaining to right livelihood, but there's a there's a prevalence of having like pets in the families these days. Like pretty much you go around seeing people have a lot of pets, like dogs and others, like many kind of different pets. And the idea is that I guess these pets are are being used for you know being a part of the family. You're feeding the pets, so they're having good life and stuff. But is there harm in having pets? Because in one way they are you're providing them all the food and everything to sustain their life, but they're also kind of attached to you in a one way. So is there a harm in having pets?
So if I was going to answer that question directly, I would say yes. But you need to look at it more closely because it's not black and white. Okay. So if we choose to have an animal, this is something that we're choosing, that we want this animal in our home. And now we're doing it for whatever reasons we have, that we want companionship or we want this being to be in our life. And now we're feeding that being, we're taking care of that being. This being isn't out living its own life. Now, we have lots of domesticated animals that they can't go out in the forest and just live by themselves. They can't sustain their life because they've become dependent on human beings. So it would be unwise for us to just turn all of our animals loose and send them all out in the forest, right? So there's animals that we have nowadays that are dependent on human beings. But in an ideal world, all beings would be making their own decisions and living their own life and sustaining their own life and being able to do that. So we're in this period of time where there have been people that have had a livelihood where they've bred these animals, and now these animals are either being treated well or not being treated well. And now some people are choosing to have animals in order to be able to help those animals to be able to live a better life and live out the rest of their life. So you need to be able to look at what are your real goals behind this animal, behind having this animal. Is it your own selfish desires that you want companionship, you want somebody to be there so you can pet them and treat them a certain way, or have you chosen to go out and get this animal from like a shelter or something like that, and now you're trying to help that animal to be able to live a life that is not getting abused and it's getting the care that it needs. So it's never black and white to be able to see this, you need to be able to look at this in your own mind. And are you doing this out of your own sensual desire and your own selfish desires? Or are you doing this out of helping another being? Ultimately, if everybody were practicing these teachings that the Buddha is sharing, nobody would have any animals in their home. But that's not something that you're going to snap your fingers and instantly practice in just one day, right? But over a course of time, as these teachings come into the world more and more, people are going to see how unwise it is to have such close contact with animals, because the viruses can come over into the human world, and we're just going to keep experiencing virus after virus after virus after virus. But that's not going to happen in our lifetime. That there's going to be plenty of people who have pets and animals in their home, and that's a choice for them to make. I'm not here to tell people what they should or shouldn't be doing in their own life. I'm here to help people see the natural law of karma. And if you can follow what I shared about the COVID and these kinds of things, you can see like, oh yeah, our close contact with animals is producing a lot of unwholesome results for us and unwholesome karma. But whether someone chooses to do that or not, that's a choice for them to make. I would never tell somebody whether they should or shouldn't be doing any particular thing. It's up to them to decide for themselves what it is that they would like to do. But as you learn these teachings more and more, you come to realize that it is best for each animal and each human to be able to make their own decisions and be unaffected by us and our own potential selfish desires. You're welcome. Yes, sir.
I have a question about the natural law of karma.
Oh, sure.
Page.
Which one?
I think that the law of karma.
Oh, it was all the way
The
back at
previous
the
one, I think the first one.
back at the beginning of the moral conduct, right here.
Yes,
Mhm.
this one. Yeah, I really like it. You have like your life, your decision leads to the result, right? Wholesome decision then will be lead to wholesome result. And how about like the backwards? Like if I experience the unwholesome result, is it necessary because my unwholesome decision, or it can be because of something else?
If you're experiencing an unwholesome result, it's coming from decisions that you're making.
It's 100% sure.
Yes.
Like from the,
There's no such thing as good luck or bad luck or destiny or fate. This being God or some entity called the universe isn't controlling you. And it's not other people that are determining what you experience. It's your decisions that are leading to that particular result. That's not to say you're at fault or you're to blame. That's not what that's about. It's about seeing that there's certain decisions that you're making that's leading to this result. And now, if you come to understand what those decisions are, you make different decisions and you'll experience different results.
then how about like an example, for example, a baby involved into a car accident, but like actually the baby didn't do anything wrong, but just unfortunately get accident and get like injured.
Yeah.
How do you say?
So again, it's not about right or wrong. That's what the mind typically is thinking about when it doesn't understand this natural law. It's not about right or wrong. Did the baby do anything wrong? Did it deserve this accident?
Right.
That's
Okay.
not what this is. That's not the natural law of karma. It's a sequence of events that because this decision was made, it leads to this next thing. It's like a dominoes. If you set up dominoes and you press one, it's going to be a cascading events, right? So because this baby didn't get to enlightenment in its previous life, it experienced this new life. And now it's in this new life and it's brand new. And now this baby isn't able to make any too many decisions on its own. Its parents are making these decisions. But the whole fact that it was born into this new life is because of its decisions in its past life. And now it's been born into a family that, let's just say, it didn't strap the baby into a car seat and now the baby dies, right? That was a decision from its parents, but the decision to get into that family came from this being from their previous life. So I'll share that with you, but then I'll also share this with you, that no matter how enlightened you are, there's 5 things that are called the unobtainables, that you can't obtain these things. So when it comes to aging, sickness, death, loss, and destruction, no matter how enlightened you are, you will still experience those 5 things. You will still experience sickness, aging, death, loss. You're going to lose material objects, and you're going to experience destruction. But the difference is that your mind won't be discontent when you experience these things as an enlightened being. So whenever you experience any particular situation, you need to look at it and decide what were the decisions that I made that led to this. So I'll give you an example from my life. It happened actually a year ago, almost exactly, that I got into a motorbike accident. And some of my students, in fact, one of them is here, said, "Wow, that sounds like a bunch of unwholesome Gama, David. I thought you were enlightened." And I don't tell people that I'm enlightened, but I don't tell people that I'm not enlightened either. But I thought that you've extinguished all your unwholesome Gama. Isn't this unwholesome Gama that you've gotten into this motorbike accident? So let's just say there's one person who's riding a motorbike and they're not paying attention. They're looking at their mobile phone. They're driving through traffic, swerving at a high speed, and they get into a car accident, or a motorbike accident. This is their unwholesome Gama because the decisions that they made led to this particular result. They could have made wiser decisions and they wouldn't have experienced that motorbike accident. So that's one scenario. But you could also have a scenario like what happened to me. I was on a brand new motorbike. I'd only had it for 5 days. It had a higher center of gravity than my old motorbike. The tires, because they were brand new, they were pumped up really high. So they weren't getting very much traction on the road. And the way that Thailand does it is their crosswalks, they have this really slippery surface on the crosswalks. And I was coming around a corner where there was a lot of traffic that day. And we were all going like very slow, but I was kind of boxed in. And when I came around this turn, there was water that was on this crosswalk. And I came around with the centrifugal force and the tires didn't grip. And now hitting that water, I flipped over and hit my head and I went unconscious for a little bit. I had a helmet on, unfortunately, right? So in this situation, when I looked at that situation, there was no decision that I could have made differently other than the fact of just don't ride a motorbike, right? And that's ultimately what I ended up doing is the students bought me a car to be able to now drive in my car, which has been a lot safer for me. But it's still not 100% safe because I could still get in an accident in that car too. This is sickness. This is loss and destruction, right? You're still going to experience those things no matter how many wise decisions you're making. You're still going to experience those things because it's based in impermanence, that the world is impermanent and this body is not permanent. You're still going to experience sickness, aging, death, loss, and destruction. So you need to look at each individual situation that you're experiencing objectively and say, what were the decisions that I made that led to this? And what were the unwise decisions that I can now improve so that I don't experience that anymore? And if you look at this objectively, and maybe you get help from your teacher to look at it, because sometimes the unenlightened mind doesn't really look at things objectively because it's got pollution and it doesn't see true reality. But if you look at it objectively, you're going to find that there's some things that happen in your life that you would rather not occur, like a motorbike accident, but it's not unwholesome Gama. It's just the unobtainables. It's the either sickness, aging, death, loss, or destruction. So in this situation where I got in the motorbike accident, I was still cheerful, I was still polite, I was still respectful. I had all the practices that the Buddha taught, but there was no discontentedness in the mind. But I still needed to deal with this sickness of the body, and I still needed to deal with this loss and destruction because I ended up selling that motorbike, and it was a brand new motorbike, but I sold it half price. And it wasn't really damaged that much. It only had like 100 kilometers on the thing, but I sold it for half price, right? So there was a loss of money, right? But I was very fortunate that there were some students that bought me this car, so it was been really helpful for me. So you're still going to experience certain things. When I tell people as an enlightened being that you will have extinguished all your unwholesome Kama, what they hear is everything's going your way. And that's not the case, right? You're still going to be experiencing sickness, aging, death, loss, and destruction. But the difference is that you won't be discontent. You'll be completely peaceful and joyful in those situations. Where in the unenlightened state, if you lose your mobile phone, you might be really angry or frustrated. But in the enlightened mental state, if you lose your mobile phone, which is possible, you'll still be able to maintain your peace and your joy. And you'll be like, that's unfortunate. Let me get another phone, right? Yeah. You're welcome. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Asked me one time.
Mhm.
She had asked me about, like, on the lines of his question.
Mhm.
So when we were in India and we were all eating at a restaurant, and Bailan, your son wanted to come to the restaurant, you gave him directions to come, and it was night.
Mhm.
And I don't remember, but it was some situation where he didn't have his phone on him.
Mhm.
So Anushka's question was that what if that decision had been a wrong decision? What if he had been lost or something like that?
Mhm. So
So
okay, you done? Okay. So what she's talking about is we all went to India. A whole bunch of us students went there, and my son, at one point, he wasn't functioning in a wise way. So me and his mother decided to not have him have his phone and his computer until he started changing the way that he was making decisions. We weren't punishing him. We were taking something out of his life that was distracting him from practicing being polite, kind, friendly, and respectful to everybody around him. So he was being disrespectful to his dad in that situation. So we decided to take away his phone, and we sat down and talked about it. And he agreed that yes, this was going to be helpful for him. So we got to a certain town that we all went about a block or two away from the hotel. We were eating, and he contacted me and said, "Hey, Dad, I would like to." Oh no, he had his phone actually at that point, but he just didn't have any minutes because he had used all of his mobile information, his data plan in India, and he could only use it while he was in the hotel. So he contacted me and he said, "Hey, I'd like to come eat with you guys." And I was like, "Sure, we're just down the road. Here's where we're at." And I shared this with him because I was actually interested to see if he was confident enough to go out on his own and walk down the street just 1 or 2 blocks to be able to come join us. Because one of the things I teach him to do is to be confident and not have fear and be scared and have trust in the people. So he ended up making his way towards the restaurant where we were at. And initially he couldn't find it, but then eventually he found us. I think, did he find us? Yeah, he found us, right? And then we all walked back together to the hotel after we were done eating. So the question is, what would you have done if something happened to your son? Well, I knew nothing was going to happen to him because I know he makes wise decisions. And but if he something did happen to him, that was his decision to choose to leave out of the hotel. It wasn't my decision. So if he didn't feel confident that he could leave out of the hotel, then he shouldn't have left the hotel. I didn't tell him to leave the hotel. I said, if you would like to come to see us, we are here. This is where we are, and you're welcome to come. And I knew that he's lived in Thailand for all these years. He's traveled throughout the world. He's been to Egypt with me. He's been to the US with me. He would be just fine. But if something would have happened, then that's what would have happened. And that's the results of his decisions. But I had confidence that that wasn't what was going to happen. But if it did happen, then we would have just dealt with whatever situation happened at that time. If he got hit by a car, then we just took him to the hospital and got him fixed. If he got kidnapped and somebody was holding him ransom, we'd be like, "Hey, I don't have any money. You can have him," and see if he'll clean the house for you. You got a new worker for yourself. Yeah, we would just handle each situation, whatever is happening. And this is not that I didn't care about him. It's just that I understand that he's responsible for his own decisions, and I'm giving him the flexibility to make whatever decision he thinks is wise for himself. And if I just try to shelter him and control him and tell him what he should or shouldn't be doing, he never gets the ability to exercise that wisdom and make wise decisions. So now he's very confident. I suspected he was going to come. I wasn't quite sure whether he would come or not, but I said that to him intentionally just to see if he would come. And then when he actually came, it allowed me to be able to see where he's at in his practice, that he felt comfortable walking in a foreign country without his mom and without his dad. He felt comfortable walking down the street as a 13-year-old boy. And I was like, excellent. He's been practicing the teachings, and this is great for him. Yeah, so I'll just repeat that for the people online. So Shweta said that being enlightened doesn't mean that everything's going perfectly and that nothing is never going to happen. That's not true. Things will happen occasionally, but you'll be able to handle it with wise decisions. Your mind won't all be shaken up in those situations. So that's why extinguishing your unwholesome karma means that 99.9999% of the time, you're going to have nothing but wonderful things happening. But occasionally there's going to be little situations here and there, and you just handle it. And you'll just be able to apply wise decision making to handle that situation, whatever it is. So, like my son, still, when he was going to school, he would have come home and he would say, some kid bullied me today. Some kid, tried to fight me. I was like, okay, well, let's handle this. Let's address it. Right. So it doesn't mean everything's going your way. You're still going to handle, or you're still going to have certain challenges, and you just handle it through wise decision making. And you'll actually be much better at handling those situations. Okay. Oh, yeah. You have a question? Yes, ma'am. That would have to be in their mind. Like, we can't really look at other people's cravings 100%. We can have an indication of what people's cravings might be, but we can't know 100% of what someone else's craving may or may not be. But if people blame me for the decision, that's their choice. I know true reality. That's where you can be at ease within your own mind, no matter what other people are saying. You can understand true reality, and now you make the decisions that you know to be wise. And your mind is unaffected by what other people think or what other people say, because there's plenty of people that see me going around and sharing the teachings of the Buddha, and they might gossip and slander about me. They say different things. Like one time I had somebody say, look at you wearing all white. You think you're so holy and you're so great and you're trying to project a certain image in the world. And actually, it's actually just the opposite. That I used to wear very expensive clothing because I used to make more money, and I wear very expensive clothing. And I actually started wearing these clothing because I wasn't interested in projecting a certain self image. That's why I started wearing these. So people will say all kinds of things to you sometimes that are based in their mind and their opinions. And just because they're saying it doesn't make it true. You need to know what's true. So if somebody would have blamed me for something that happened to my son, okay, up to them. But I know it's him making his own decisions, and then that's what's leading to his results. I'm not making decisions for him. It's his decisions that are leading to the results that he experiences. Okay. All right. So now I would go to this next part of the talk where I'm going to share with you guys the mental discipline section of the Eightfold Path, which is right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. But I'd like to share something with you guys. I meant to share with you at break is that typically when I teach the Eightfold Path, it takes a little bit of time. And while I plan for an hour and a half lunch break each individual day, oftentimes when I teach this particular topic, we don't actually get an hour and a half lunch break. So if you guys would like to order food in or something like that, feel free to do that kind of stuff while I'm teaching now. So it'll be here for you because we'll probably have about an hour for lunch. And I don't know if that's enough time for you guys to go out and get what you need and bring it back. But if anybody needs to order something or anything like that, feel free to do any of that kind of stuff that you need to do, because it's going to take me about 30 minutes to teach you this section of the mental discipline section. Okay. So we're going to teach you guys right effort here. What the Buddha says is, in what monks is right effort? Here, monks, a monk rouses his will, makes an effort, stirs up energy, exerts his mind, and strives to prevent the arising of unarisen, evil, unwholesome mental states. He rouses his will, makes an effort, stirs up energy, exerts his mind, and strives to overcome evil, unwholesome mental states that have arisen. He rouses his will, makes an effort, stirs up energy, exerts his mind, and strives to produce unarisen, wholesome mental states. He rouses his will, makes an effort, stirs up energy, exerts his mind, and strives to maintain wholesome mental states that have arisen, not to let them fade away, to bring them to greater growth, to the full perfection of development. This is called right effort. So he's talking about 4 things here. And on the next slide, I've broken this down for you to be able to help you see what it is that the Buddha is teaching you. And I'm providing you examples to be able to help you understand how to apply right effort. What he's talking about is applying the effort to eliminate unwholesome qualities from your mind, and cultivate certain wholesome qualities in your mind. So, for example, the first one, he's talking about preventing unwholesome mental states that have not arisen from arising in the mind. So there's certain unwholesome mental states that are very, very far from your mind right now. So, for example, like killing another human being is probably the last thing that's anywhere remotely in your mind right now. And the Buddha is saying you need to apply the effort to prevent those kinds of things from coming into the mind. You're going to need to apply the effort to do that. Then the next one is to abandon unwholesome mental states that have arisen in the mind. In the unenlightened state, there's a certain amount of unwholesomeness that's actually in your mind right now. And you're going to need to apply the effort to eliminate that out of your mind. So, for example, if you're in an existing relationship and you have a craving to have sex outside of that relationship, that's going to cause harm to your relationship. And when you see that craving coming up in your mind, you know that that's unwholesome and it's going to produce unwholesome results. You're going to need to apply the effort to eliminate that out of your mind. Or anger, frustration, irritation. As you're noticing that unwholesome quality coming up into your mind, you're going to need to apply the effort to eliminate that out of your mind. Then there's the third one. Produce unarisen wholesome mental states to arise in the mind. So there's certain wholesome qualities that are not currently in your mind right now. And you're going to need to apply the effort to bring these into your mind, like generosity and compassion. What generosity is giving and sharing more than is strictly required in any given situation without any expectation of anything in return, such as your time, effort, energy, and resources. If you find it to be hard to share with people, if you find that you're kind of selfish, this is because the mind has craving, desire, attachment. You're holding on. You're going to need to practice generosity where you're giving and sharing with other people and you're joyful and living open-handedly, sharing with others. Well, if you see that your mind is selfish, you're going to need to apply the effort to bring this generosity into your mind where you're willing to share with the people around you. And the same thing with compassion. If you live on one side of compassion, you'll be indifferent. You could care less about what happens to other people or other beings. If you have the other side of compassion, you'll be having worry and anxiety anytime you see anything happening that is unwholesome or unfortunate for other beings. You'll have this anxiety and stress in your mind. And that's because your compassion hasn't been brought to the middle. So you're going to need to bring this compassion into the mind, applying the effort to do that. Then there's maintaining wholesome mental states that have arisen, not allowing them to fade away. Work to increase their growth in the mind, bring them to full growth, full perfection, and full development. So there's certain wholesome mental states that you have in your mind right now, but they haven't been brought to full growth, full perfection, and full development. And you're going to need to apply the effort to do that. For example, loving kindness. You probably have loving kindness in your mind, which is a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. So in certain situations, you have love and kindness for others, but in other situations, you don't have that. You have anger and hostility and bitterness in your mind. And you're going to need to apply the effort to bring this loving kindness into your mind and bubble it up in your mind more and more so it can permeate in your mind. Same thing with something like sympathetic joy. You might actually have sympathetic joy in your mind, where sympathetic joy is the joy for others' success, even if you didn't contribute to it. That this is the opposite of jealousy and envy, right? So you probably have sympathetic joy. Someone's like, hey, I'm thinking about going to Thailand. Maybe you've been to Thailand before. And you're like, oh, I've been to Thailand before. That's wonderful. You'll have a great time. You know, there's this lady that sells mango and sticky rice that's on the corner. You might go check her out. She sells really good mango and sticky rice, right? You have joy for their success. But in other situations, you might be at work and a new position opens up and you apply, and so do some of your colleagues, your coworkers, and they get the job instead of you. And now you're jealous and envious. That's because your sympathetic joy hasn't been brought to full growth, full perfection, and full development. You're going to need to apply the effort to bring that into your mind, especially when they're going around the office gloating and being conceited that they got the new job and you're sitting there looking at them and you're like, right? So you're going to need to apply the effort to bring that sympathetic joy into the mind. So this is what it means to apply right effort, that you're eliminating the unwholesome and you're bringing in the wholesome. And you're going to need to apply the effort to do that. It's not going to happen automatically. Okay. Then you wouldn't be able to practice right effort without right mindfulness. You're going to need this next step in order to practice right effort. So here's what the Buddha says. In what monks is right mindfulness? Here, monks, a monk resides, reflecting on body as body, dedicated, clearly aware and mindful, having put aside craving and worry for the world. He resides reflecting on feelings as feelings, dedicated, clearly aware and mindful, having put aside craving and worry for the world. He resides reflecting on mind as mind, dedicated, clearly aware and mindful, having put aside craving and worry for the world. He resides reflecting on mental objects as mental objects, dedicated, clearly aware and mindful, having put aside craving and worry for the world. This is called right mindfulness. So he's talking about four things here: body as body, feelings as feelings, mind as mind, mental objects as mental objects. What he's actually talking about is something called the four foundations of mindfulness. But before we talk about that, let's just talk about mindfulness in general. Mindfulness in general means awareness of mind. You're going to need to develop some awareness of mind. You're going to need to be aware of your thoughts, your ideas, your feelings, your emotions. You need to be aware of what's going on in here, because oftentimes we're not aware. In the unenlightened state, we'll just plow through the world, knocking down trees, burning up the forest, not really caring what our decisions are resulting and how people are experiencing us. We just plow through the world, right? I don't know about you, but that's what I did for a long time. I was plowing through the world, knocking down trees, burning up the forest. And I got to a point where I started smelling smoke, and I was like, what is that? And I saw the fire and I saw the trees were knocked down. I was like, who knocked down all those trees? And then I learned right view and I realized, oh my gosh, I'm the one who knocked down all those trees. I'm the one who lit that fire, right? So you need this awareness of mind to be able to be aware of what's going on within your own mind, because oftentimes you don't have that. Now, sometimes this word has made its way into modern conversations, and people use this in a way that it's actually not intended to be used by the Buddha. Now, if other people use it in a certain way, that's up to them. But what you would like to do is make sure you understand how the Buddha used this word. So what some people might say is, can you mindfully carry this glass of water to the table over there? That's not what the Buddha's talking about. What the people are doing is they're replacing the word careful with mindful. What they're saying is, can you carefully carry this glass of water to the kitchen or to the table? That's not what the Buddha is teaching you. He's teaching you to practice mindfulness, which is awareness of mind. So whether other people consider mindfulness to mean one thing or another, it's up to them. But if you're interested in getting to enlightenment and what the Buddha taught, you're going to need to understand what the Buddha taught. So he taught this word mindfulness as awareness of your mind. And you need to develop that. And sometimes people just start with that for several months, if they just start developing this awareness of what's going on in their mind. But in more detail, you're going to need to develop what's called the four foundations of mindfulness. What this is the Buddha is explaining to you the life cycle that your discontentedness is going to take as you're getting your cravings, desires, attachments triggered. So when you experience certain contact through your eyes, ears, nose, your tongue, your body, or within your mind itself, it will trigger a certain craving, desire, attachment. And when that's getting triggered, prior to you experiencing the feeling of something like anger, there's going to be bodily sensations first. There's going to be like tingling in the body, tightening in the chest, tightening in the throat, heat in the face, pressure in the skull. You may or may not be aware of these right now, but you need to start tuning into this, because this is an early warning system alerting you that you're about to get angry. You're about to get frustrated. You're about to get irritated or annoyed. And what the Buddha teaches you is to apply right effort and cut it off and let it go as a bodily sensation. You're not suppressing your feelings or repressing your feelings. You're actually cutting it off and letting it go before it ever became a feeling, when it's just a bodily sensation. You're essentially protecting the mind from having to experience that anger. Because once the anger gets in the mind, you've got a real problem to deal with. You've got to get rid of it. It's kind of like if you were going to take a boat from the USA to the UK and you were out in the middle of the ocean. You would like to prevent the water from ever coming into the boat. Because once the water gets in the boat, you've got a real problem to deal with. You've got to get it out, right? So it's the same thing that you'd like to prevent your mind from forming this conditioned feeling. So the bodily sensations is the early warning system alerting you that your mind's about to form a conditioned feeling. It's something that each one of you have that you may not be aware of right now. It's like the body and the mind are saying, I'm about to form a conditioned feeling here. I'm about to form a conditioned feeling. And you're saying, nope, not going to let you do that. So there's the body, there's the mind, and the combination of these things is the person. And the person is looking at the mind and looking at the body and seeing, oh my goodness, there's those bodily sensations. The mind's about to form a conditioned feeling, and I'm not going to let you do that. Because as long as you keep doing that, the mind's just going to stay wired that way. So this early warning system is there to alert you that this is about to occur. And now you say, nope, you apply right effort. Nope, not going to let you do that. Cut that off and let it go. And if you do that enough, eventually your mind will never form these conditioned feelings anymore. But in the process of training your mind to get to that point, you're going to need to be aware of this and cut it off and let it go. Because if you miss it as a bodily sensation, it's going to become a feeling. Your mind's now angry. There's frustration. There's embarrassment. There's stress. There's loneliness or boredom or guilt or shame or fear in your mind. So now you've got that feeling. And now if you don't cut it off there, because you could also cut it off there, if you don't cut it off there, it's going to stick around and it's going to linger for a while. This is going to affect the condition of your mind for a few hours, a few days. Have you ever been irritated for like a week or two? Grumpy and irritable for a week or two? Of course you have, right? Because you didn't understand these Four Noble Truths and the four foundations of mindfulness. You didn't know to cut it off at the bodily sensations. You didn't know to cut it off at the feelings. And now it affected the condition of your mind. For a few hours, a few days, maybe a week or two, you're irritable and grumpy. And then it fed what's called a mental object. A mental object is a deeply rooted container in the mind. In this case, it's ill will. All those fetters that I described yesterday, those pollutions of the mind, those are all mental objects. They're deeply rooted containers in the mind. They didn't exist when we were born. We weren't born into this world with ill will in our mind. We didn't go into the nursery hating other babies, right? We didn't have conceit when we were first born, arrogance and pride, measuring and comparing. We didn't go into the nursery like, my gloves are better than your gloves. My crib's better than your crib. My hat's better than your hat, right? We didn't do that because we didn't have that mental object in our mind yet. But because of this process that we weren't aware of and we lacked wisdom, we formed those mental objects over time. And now what the Buddha is teaching you to do is put a blockade at the bodily sensations and cut off and let go at the bodily sensations so that way you can uproot these mental objects out of the mind and get them out of the mind. That's the purification of the mind that you're doing as part of the path to enlightenment. So you're going to need awareness of the bodily sensations, the feelings, the condition of the mind, and the mental objects, and you'd like to cut it off at the bodily sensations, and that's applying right effort. So what I just described to you is the technical description of this, but let me explain to you how this works in day-to-day life in a real-world example. Let's just say you're sitting on the sofa and you're watching the news, and as you're watching the news, you start noticing this tingling in the body, tightening in the chest, heat in the face, pressure in the skull. You know you're about to get angry based on what you're seeing on the news. Well, don't just sit there and dwell in that, because that's going to allow your mind to form this feeling. If you notice the bodily sensations, cut off the news, go for a walk, go for a bike ride. Don't let your mind form that feeling. That's applying right effort to cut it off and let it go. And if you do this enough, over time, your mind won't form that feeling anymore. So go to the bathroom, go to the kitchen, get a glass of water, turn off the news, go do something else, right? And if you can do this with each individual situation where you walk away from the situation, that's going to train your mind to let go. That's why you're walking away from that heated conversation when you're getting angry and frustrated and you feel like you want to stand there and argue with the person and be bitter and harsh and hostile with them. The best thing you can do is walk away. Train your mind to let go. That's what's going to help protect your mind and preserve the relationship, right? So this is how you implement it in your day-to-day life, is you're redirecting the mind towards something else so that your mind can let go. And over time, if you do this enough, your mind won't ever do that. And eventually you'll be able to get to the point where you can watch the news and you'll be unaffected by it. You're just listening to things that are happening in the world, but your mind's not experiencing anger and frustration and all these other discontent feelings, because that's not your love. That's just coming from your craving for the world to be a certain way. That's why the Buddha says here, you need to eliminate craving and worry for the world, right? You see that? Is it here? I think, yeah, it's here, right? Yeah, there it is. Having put aside craving and worry for the world. That's what's happening when you're watching the news and you're getting angry and frustrated, or you're feeling sad hearing about all the problems in the world. That's your craving for the world to be a certain way. You need to understand that the world's never going to function the way you want it to function. That there's 8 billion beings in the world making independent decisions, and they're not going to make decisions the way you want them to make it. You need to let go and understand that you can maintain your care and concern while not craving this permanence, right? And you're also not indifferent either, where you could care less, but you're in the middle, choosing to be unaffected by other people's decisions. So your mindfulness is going to help you to see that bodily sensations are arising, and you cut off and let go. And you're going to miss it sometimes, because right now your mind's not well trained, so it's going to become a feeling. So cut it off there. And if you miss it there, cut it off as a condition of the mind. It's kind of like a wild bush, that when this wild bush is growing, you'd like to cut it back and cut it back and cut it back and cut it back, and eventually uproot it out of the mind. So, as I mentioned, right mindfulness is needed in order to practice right effort. You wouldn't be able to practice right effort without right mindfulness, but you wouldn't be able to practice right mindfulness without right concentration. Right concentration is the last part of the Eightfold Path. So here the Buddha is explaining what's called the jhanas. These are preliminary phases that the mind experiences where there's enhanced qualities of mind that after you put together all the steps of the Eightfold Path, you're going to experience these qualities. I'm not going to teach you this today, but you will need to learn this at some point in your journey to enlightenment, because when you start experiencing these enhanced qualities of mind, that's where your practice really pivots and you start focusing on some other things because you've put together the Eightfold Path really well. What I'm going to teach you today is how to practice right concentration, because that's what the Buddha teaches in other parts of his teachings, is how to actually practice right concentration. The way you practice this is you need to develop a meditation practice, and you need to develop what's called singleness of mind. Your meditation practice consists of 2 primary meditations, which is breathing mindfulness meditation and loving kindness meditation. That's why after lunch, I'm going to teach that to you guys so you can know that really well. The breathing mindfulness meditation is the first one that you usually work with for about 4 weeks. And then you bring in the loving kindness meditation. There's specific goals with each of these meditations that I'm going to explain for you after lunch. You would like to build up to 2 or 3 sessions per day for about 30 minutes. And that can sound like a lot for some people, but if you look at your life, there's probably some unbeneficial things that you're doing that if you clear those things out of your life, you'd have a lot more time to do things like meditation. And then there's 2 specialized meditations that are used on an as needed basis that you can also learn at different times too. But the first 2, breathing mindfulness meditation and loving kindness, everybody's going to need those. So you'd like to gradually build this practice up, realizing it can take you 6 months, a year, even 2 years to build up your meditation practice of 2 or 3 sessions for 30 minutes. That's going to help you to build your mindfulness and awareness of mind. And it's also going to help you to build this internal mechanism where you're able to cut off and let go. The goal of that breathing mindfulness meditation isn't to eliminate your thoughts. It's to notice them sooner and sooner and cut them off and let them go easier and easier. And I'm going to explain this more after lunch. Then you'd like to practice what's called singleness of mind, where you're doing just one thing at a time. Oftentimes people think that they can multitask. If you've been taught that you're multitasking, you're actually not multitasking. What you're doing is you're doing one thing for like 3 to 5 seconds, and then you're rapidly cycling to something else, and you're doing that for 3 to 5 seconds, and you're doing something else for 8 seconds, and you're not doing all these things at one time. You're just kind of racing around a horse track, right? And if you've ever been to a racetrack, where horses race around a racetrack, when they go to the barn, they have a really hard time calming down because they're so hyped up. This is why you might come home from work and you find it very difficult to relax, where you have stress and anxiety in your mind because you're racing around at work all throughout your day. So you need to learn how to do just one thing at a time. This is called singleness of mind. And wherever you see your mind wandering, you need to apply right effort to cut that off and let it go. So your mindfulness or awareness of mind is kind of like a virus scanner watching over your mind. And whenever you see that it's not practicing singleness of mind, you would like to cut that off and let it go and come back. So if you're washing the dishes and you see your mind's wandering, cut that off and come back, right? Or if you're listening to a teacher talk and you're thinking about, wow, I can't wait to get lunch. That pizza smells really good. Or, that idea of going to eat Thai food sounds really good. And you see your mind wandering, you would like to cut that off and come back. If you're in a business meeting and you're noticing your mind wandering, you would like to cut that off and bring it back because you're not being beneficial in the business meeting. Is not going to help you in your career. So you need to get used to practicing singleness of mind more and more. And then your mind will actually do that all the time. So it's kind of like if you had a piece of wood and a steel rod and you were grinding this back and forth, initially it's going to bounce around a lot because there's no groove there yet. But if you grind this steel rod back and forth enough, you're going to get a groove going. And when it pops out, you're going to notice that it's popped out and you're going to bring it right back to the groove. But if you grind this steel rod back and forth enough, eventually you're going to get such a deep groove that it'll never pop out. You can just stay focused and concentrated at all times during your day. So the way you accomplish that is by practicing singleness of mind, where you're doing just one thing at a time. And this is going to help you to be able to develop this concentration. Because how could you ever bring forth your wisdom to practice something like right speech if you're talking on the phone to your mom, watching TV, and eating a sandwich? If you're trying to do all these things at one time, you're going to slip up and you're going to say something unwise, and now it's going to damage your relationship. You need to be able to get to the point where you're practicing these teachings 100% of the time, effortlessly. Initially, it's very challenging to practice these teachings, but by the time you get to enlightenment, you'll be practicing these teachings effortlessly because your mind has been upgraded to this new operating system. So you're never going to get to that if you practice trying to do more than one thing at a time. You need to just do one thing at a time so you can bring forth your full wisdom. And that's what's going to help you to now implement all the teachings. So you're going to need to practice singleness of mind. So this mental discipline section, it's actually helping you to practice the moral conduct. If you didn't have the mental discipline practice going on, you wouldn't be able to practice the moral conduct, like the right speech, of practicing gentle speech and eliminating harsh speech. You're going to need your mindfulness where you can see the anger and the frustration arising. And then you're going to need to apply right effort to say, no, 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 no. Now is not the proper time to talk. I'm not going to go talk to that person. Or I'm talking with this person and I see my anger arising. And the best thing for me to do is to walk away and allow this conversation to calm down, that this isn't the proper time to talk. And I'm not the one causing that person's anger. And there's nothing that I can do to stop them from being angry. They have to choose to do that on their own. So each of these sections are actually working with the others to be able to help you practice them fully. So just to recap and summarize what we just talked about, is right effort is taking the initiative to eliminate certain unwholesome aspects of the mind and cultivate wholesome qualities in the mind. This is applying the effort to do that. Then there's right mindfulness, which you're developing awareness of mind. That's where you might hang out for a little bit. But then more specifically, the 4 foundations of mindfulness, where you're aware of the bodily sensations, that early warning system that's alerting you that you're about to have a discontent feeling. Then there's the feelings, the condition of your mind, and then the mental objects. These are the 4 foundations that you need to develop awareness of each of these things. Then there's right concentration, where you're practicing meditation and you're practicing singleness of mind on a daily basis. That's what's going to really hone your concentration and give you the ability to put all the other teachings into practice. Okay, so this is the Eightfold Path, all 8 steps. And if this is your first time learning it, you're going to need to learn it again. I've had some students sit and learn this 4, 5, 6 different times. There's videos, there's podcasts, there's books, there's additional classes that you can learn from me. So this is your first time through. You start chipping away at it little by little and start implementing it little by little. But then you're going to need to revisit it in order to be able to really fully hone it in your day-to-day life. So do you guys have any questions on any aspect of this at all? So if you've been turn them on every single time. You have that wired mic somewhere, Vibhan? We could just plug that in too.
So if you miss a bodily sensation or feeling turns into a condition of mind, but then your body
It'll still help you because you're catching it, wherever you catch it and you're cutting it off and you're not letting the mind stay wired that way. But if you're going to get to enlightenment, you're going to have to catch it every single time as a bodily sensation. That's getting ahead of the curve. Sometimes what people think is you need to welcome the feelings in, you need to make friends with the feelings. People think that all these feelings are great and wonderful. I feel alive when I have these feelings. This isn't actually true. It's actually hindering someone from experiencing complete peace and joy and happiness that is permanent. So as long as you allow the mind to have the feeling, then you're never going to get to the point where you have permanent peace and permanent happiness and permanent joy. So you got to get ahead of it and cut it off as a bodily sensation. But it's going to take you multiple years to get to that point where you can cut it off every single time as a bodily sensation. But once you get to that point, you're very close to enlightenment, about 1 to 3 years away from enlightenment, when you are able to cut off and let go at the bodily sensations every single time. So you still should cut off at the feelings and condition of the mind, but you're not going to get to enlightenment if that's the only place where you're cutting it off.
So again, I'm not very great at judging perfect time to ask something, but this feels like to me that it is in line with what we're discussing. So earlier we discussed aversion, and I was telling you that I do that in conversations, and I do aversion because I avoid having pain that I feel from tones from people and stuff like that. So so when I get bodily sensations, it actually makes the pain that I feel from having interaction with people feel better. So I don't know if there's positive bodily sensations and negative bodily sensations, and if we should judge them as okay to have if it's curing my pain that I feel from interactions.
Okay. So you're saying when you leave out of the conversation, it helps you to feel better.
Yeah, the bodily sensations.
Okay. So first, let's just be sure you understand what aversion is. Okay. Because from the outside looking out in, these two things can look exactly the same. That if you're walking away from a conversation, that doesn't mean you have aversion just because you're walking away from the conversation. If somebody walks away from a relationship or they walk away and they think that this other person is causing them to experience painful feelings, and the mind thinks that the way to solve this is to push this person away, that's aversion. Where you can be in a conversation, realize that you're starting to experience discontentedness, and you realize it's wise for me to walk away because this mind is experiencing anger, and you know that it's your own mind that's causing this anger, but you're still choosing to walk away from the conversation. That's not aversion. That's a wise choice that you're realizing, oh my goodness, this mind's about to get angry, and I'm not interested in being in this conversation while I'm angry because it's going to produce some results, and let me choose to walk away. The difference here is that you're maintaining right view. If you maintain right view, that you understand that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings, that's not aversion. That's a wise decision. But if you're walking away from a conversation or a relationship or a situation because you're experiencing painful feelings and you think that pushing this person away is going to solve that, that's aversion. And that's not what you're interested in doing. So from the outside looking in, the same thing's happening as somebody's walking away from a relationship or a conversation. But what determines whether it's aversion or not is, are you having right view to understand that those painful feelings are coming from your own mind? The reason why you're experiencing improvement when you're walking away is because that's your mind letting go. You're letting go of craving, desire, attachment. And that's why it's wise to walk away in those situations. That if you stay in the conversation, your mind's not letting go. So you would like to walk away, and that's going to train your mind to let go. And that's why you're experiencing that it feels better when you walk away. And if you do that enough times, eventually you'll eliminate the underlying craving and you'll be able to stay in the conversation and you won't have to leave. You might choose to leave for other reasons. If you see them becoming angry, you might be perfectly peaceful and joyful, but you see the person you're talking to becoming bent out of shape and you're like, you know what, let me just step away because this conversation isn't going to go well. And your mind's completely peaceful. And you start to understand that with the 5 factors of well-spoken speech about speaking at the proper time.
Okay, so my answer is whether I recognize whether or not I'm having right view in my own mind.
Yes, if you have right view, it's not aversion,
Okay.
right? Because you understand that, hey, this mind is experiencing discontentedness. I need to distance myself here. Let me walk away. I'm going to get rid of this craving. And then at some point in the future, I'll have a conversation with this person. But if you're walking away and be like, they're making me angry and I need to get them out of my life because they're making me angry, that's aversion, where your mind is blaming the other person for the feelings you're experiencing.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm. Okay. So it looks like that's all the questions. I don't see any online. So it's 1:30. Let's see. We're going to finish up at 3:30. So we can take an hour lunch, which will be till 2:30. And that'll give us time in the afternoon to teach meditation. So enjoy your lunch. I'll see you guys at 2:30. This has been great to share this with you. I understand you're going to need to learn it some more. You can't learn it in one situation, but I'm going to start at 2:30 with teaching you guys the ins and outs of breathing mindfulness meditation. So thank you for your questions. Thank you for your interest to learn. And perhaps I'll see you guys in the afternoon session. Okay. Enjoy your lunch.